The maid remarked that the weather was surprisingly fine today. The mistress fully agreed with this. The maid asked me to let you know if it suddenly gets cold. The main character's name is Anastasia Sinclair. She is the daughter of Count Sinclair and is considered the first beauty of the entire empire. She came here about a month ago. Who would have thought that one of her favorite books would come to life? But the main problem is that Anastasia is terminally ill. Ironic because her name means resurrection. In the book, she dies right at the very beginning. After this, he appears only in the protagonist's memories. The maid noted that her bloody cough had become more frequent. Anastasia assured that everything was fine. The maid didn't think so, but the mistress only said that it was time for her to wash. The maid asked to drink the medicine first. Anastasia didn't want to because it wouldn't help anyway, but at least the pain will become weaker, so the lady is obliged to drink. Anastasia did not understand why she had to torture herself with this poison. After all, the end was already inevitable. The disease is so rare that it doesn't even have a name. In the book, she didn't live to be 18, and she died in the arms of the main character. Their first meeting was at the funeral. It is very symbolic to connect love with death. She didn't care that the end was coming soon, but at least she would have time to live as such a beauty. And the previous body was probably worse than this one, even though they had the same destiny. Most likely, she is no longer there. But Anastasia decided not to think about it and took the medicine. The maid was worried, and the mistress told her to bring the candies faster. The maid said that the bedroom had already been cleaned, and Anastasia thanked her. It was also reported that Mr. Magnus was already on his way. Anastasia asked to say that she was sleeping. The lady immediately started running, and the maids tried to stop her because her hair was not dry yet. Alexander Magnus is a man who is either for everything good or against everything bad. He is the main character of the story, and over time he will become a real knight, born to lead people kind noble fare. Even in a fight with the enemy, he never humiliated someone else's honor. As the head of the Duchy of Magnus, one of the main families of the empire, he respected everyone, even commoners. His straightforward kindness made him a favorite. He knocked on the door and asked if the lady was asleep. He glanced at the table and realized that she was bleeding again. His voice was deep as it should be. Magnus apologized for being abrupt and quickly pulled the blanket off since she was not sleeping. He was incredibly handsome. Anastasia was taken aback that he just took the blanket from the lady. Magnus chuckled and asked if she was still avoiding his gaze. He thought she was still angry with him about the festival, and he was right. She wanted to go with the servants to watch the fireworks, but he simply wouldn't let her go. Anastasia noticed that he himself knew how little time she had. She appreciates his concern, but she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life in a room. He asked her not to lose hope. Perhaps a cure will be found, but she is sure that there is none in this world. Magnus didn't understand why she was so convinced. It was because she was the only one who suffered from it. And since it hardly hurts, it's time to stop, Magnus asked to keep hope for his family and him. She was bored with this conversation, but she couldn't just drive this good-natured guy away. Anastasia said that she would die anyway, and it was better for him to come to terms with it and not be sad. And then she asked if he had said everything. Magnus apologized and added that the Count had instructed him to take care of her. And until he returns, he is responsible for her. Then she said that he should just protect her on the street. She tried to calm herself down because he was not her husband. Magnus apologized if he made her angry, but she was weak and might fall now. This argument tired her out, so she asked how about tomorrow. The Duke said with a smile that a short walk would do no harm, and he was glad that she understood him. Anastasia decided something. She will gain strength, and tomorrow she will make him regret this humiliation. The maid said she would take out the trash, but the lady asked her to leave it. The servant was surprised by this, but she would still need this trash. Anastasia greeted Alexander and noticed that she was already feeling better. The Duke was glad that she came to life so quickly. Alexander extended his hand to her, but the lady merely waved it off, saying that she could handle it herself. He couldn't believe that he still disgusted her. As a sign of reconciliation, he apologized, even being happy that they were just walking next to each other. Anastasia suddenly asked if he would help her. Alexander grinned, only if it does not violate the law. The girl calmly said that she didn't have long left, and she had long since come to terms with this. If so, then at least in the remaining time she wants to see as much as possible. But he only interferes. Alexander stood his ground. It was for her own safety. Anastasia grabbed his hand, reminding him that since it concerned her, her opinion was also important. If he has even a drop of conscience, he will agree, but he again pretends not to hear. She would never forgive him for this even after death. The Duke admitted guiltily that he simply wanted the best. He asked if his actions hurt her, and suggested that she be honest with him about what she wanted. Then he swears on his life that he will fulfill her wish. Anastasia's eyes lit up when she heard this. She asked him to visit her daily in his free time. Alexander wondered if she was serious, but the lady only nodded. She noted that he had already done a lot for her, and she appreciated it. The Duke admitted that he always thought she hated him. The heroine remembered that Anastasia in the book had a rather complex character. She was harsh even with her family, and Alexander often got it the hardest. Perhaps even he couldn't take it anymore at some point because it wasn't easy. Alexander sighed, saying that he understood her displeasure, but he couldn't stop worrying. She may not trust him yet, but at least she doesn't despise him, and that's already good news. Anastasia smiled and extended her hand in a sign of reconciliation. He responded to the gesture, and meanwhile she felt how very nervous she was. After all, she is touching the main character of the book, but she needs to stay calm, because her revenge was just beginning. She looked at him and asked if he saw it. She found a wrapper in her hands, which she immediately threw on the ground. Alexander noticed that she had dropped it and reached out to pick it up. The lady stopped him with her hand and said that it would be better for him to simply forget her. After all, he promised to do anything, which means he shouldn't raise it. The Duke noted that it was forbidden to scatter rubbish in the garden. Anastasia broke the rules but had no intention of cleaning up. She knew in advance that he would get angry and his obedient nature would take over. Alexander didn't understand why she was doing this. Apparently, it was simply because she was a bad person. She gave him another wrapper and said it was his turn now. The gentleman refused and said he couldn't do it. Anastasia replied that then she would never believe him again, because he doesn't keep his word. It was so disappointing. Alexander did not understand how she could say that. The lady only added that she did not want to waste time and left. Alexander stopped her, however, promising that he would keep his word. The Duke confidently said that he would leave her and asked her to trust him. He lowered her to the ground and noted that he was able to do it. It was good that he kept his word. But if he comes back for it later, their relationship is over. Alexander must understand this. He was shocked but agreed. He continued to watch them, looking very cute. Anastasia noted that everything went well and hoped that they would find common ground. When the mistress returned, the maid asked how the walk had gone. The lady said it was refreshing and Alexander was very nice. To be honest, she was now in confusion because she had decided to live on without regrets. Alexander has not yet met the main character, so his attitude towards Anastasia has not changed. Anastasia didn't want to fall in love with this good-natured guy. After all, they are just friends and we can't forget about that. The maid was glad that the lady liked everything. The maid had already taken the tray, but the mistress did not want to hear about medicine again. Anastasia immediately ran away, but the maid warned her that she couldn't escape anyway. She didn't understand where she was. For some reason, Alexander was sitting next to her. It was not clear whether he had always been so handsome. She was even confused. Alexander noted that she was so cute that it was hard for him to restrain himself. The lady didn't understand what he meant, but he said that he wanted to kiss her. They kissed, but suddenly the girl jumped up. It was just a dream. Everything seemed so real that she was even upset that she woke up. She decided that it was impossible, after all, Alexander would fall in love with the main character. It seems like she's already fallen in love with him, that's why she's angry. After all, she knows what will happen after her death. The lady finally woke up, and the maid told her that she had received a letter from her brother. The brother wrote to his most wonderful and charming little sister that the butler had reported to him how she was feeling. He was very glad that even in such a situation she did not lose heart. He is currently in the north and is planning to see his parents in a couple of weeks. This time he will come with good news. Judging by the letter, the Sinclair family has been traveling the world for a long time. When the main character first found herself in this body, everyone immediately realized that her condition was getting worse. Therefore, they hurried to look for a cure because this was a strong family, not like many nobles. A kind father, a strict but caring mother, and an older brother who constantly made fun of Anastasia. Therefore, so that no one would notice the substitution, she responded to them only with coldness and indifference. It's quite sad because her family really loved her. The main character's relatives never noticed her. They ignored her, didn't even want to meet her eyes. She fell asleep alone, ate alone. It seemed like they lived in the same house, but it felt like they were in different worlds. She didn't know what parental love was, so it was strange to her. But when she got used to it, she even sometimes smiled during conversations. So that no one feels regret, then their love will not be in vain. If she had been even a little sincere, perhaps they would have remembered her smile. In the letter, the brother also asked if she found the guy who was always hanging around strange. Anastasia decided that they were talking about Alexander and did not understand what the question was about. After that, she remembered her dream and immediately became embarrassed by her own thoughts. She acted like a girl in love but immediately wrote it all off to the fact that he was simply handsome. True, it is too straightforward and a bit stupid, which is why it throws you off track. Although he is still cute, he makes you want something more. The maid approached the lady and asked if something had happened. The girl thought it was unfair. It was like she wanted to steal someone else's boyfriend. After that, she turned to Irina and asked if she would help her. The maid didn't mind, so the mistress said it was time to do something new. The maid thought that the mistress wanted to emphasize her beauty even more. Anastasia really wanted to change her image a little. Great, now Alexander definitely won't be able to take his eyes off her. Anastasia greeted Alexander, and he was also glad to see her. The girl asked her dad to bake his favorite gingerbread cookies and hoped that he would like them. Alexander thanked her and said that he would definitely try. Anastasia decided that the moment had come. Their hands accidentally touched. Alexander apologized, saying that he should have given in to her. Anastasia replied that it was nothing, and he could take it too. Then she noted how beautiful Alexander's hands were. Then she asked him to give her hand for comparison. Alexander sheepishly said that his hands were big and rough. But if she wants it that way, he doesn't mind. Anastasia noticed how long and strong his fingers were. For some reason, her words confused him, but the calluses on his hands healed quickly. This was part of the power of a fencing genius. Anastasia asked how he liked her hands. Alexander thought for a second. Then he said that they were small and delicate, as if they could crumble from one touch. Anastasia reminded that they had already held hands yesterday, so nothing would happen to them. Alexander explained that it was just a metaphor. They were friends, and such touching seemed wrong to him. He felt awkward holding her hand. Anastasia asked if he regretted it because she liked it. Alexander admitted that he felt the same way and that he was glad that she wasn't angry with him. Others reproach him for his mistakes, but she forgives him and helps him become better. He is grateful to her for this. Angelina decided that he didn't care about her efforts. He wasn't interested at all. Alexander said it was just human solidarity. Anastasia looked at him and said he was driving her crazy. Alexander immediately tensed up and asked if he had said anything unnecessary. He really wanted to understand what was going on and asked her to explain, because he is ready to improve. But Anastasia, looking at him, only wanted to tease him more. Alexander didn't quite understand what she was talking about, and then she came closer and offered to steal some food. He didn't immediately understand what she meant, but Anastasia simply told him to follow her. They got there, and in front of them was a special nut pie that the chef had put his heart into, and they were going to steal it. Alexander was in complete shock and didn't know what to do. They hid under the table while the chef asked in surprise where the pie had gone. After all, he put it there himself. The cook was beside himself. His favorite dessert was gone. These are emotions. Alexander told Anastasia that the boss was very worried. It seems he believed him. The Duke did not understand why she did not want to give the pie because it was prepared for her. He also noted that if he asked, the boss would probably agree to give it to him. Meanwhile, Anastasia offered him a piece. The chef was lamenting that he could not find his nut pie. Alexander told Anastasia that he was very upset. The girl decided that she had enough and they would return the rest and run away. Alexander noted that he had never done anything like this before and asked why all this was happening. Anastasia said with surprise that he still didn't understand. She throws trash, steals pies because she is just a terrible person without principles and conscience. And now Alexander is her accomplice. But since that's the case, she will listen to him and they will return the pie. Anastasia turned to Luke, asking if he was the one looking for the pie. The chef was glad to see her. She said she could take it since she only ate one piece. And then she added that Alexander was so hungry that he stole the pie. The Duke tried to explain that it was a mistake, but the chief was in complete shock. Alexander begged her not to believe her because it was a lie. Anastasia also pretended to be shocked, and Alexander was horrified that she was setting him up so easily. He had done nothing wrong, so he thought it was unfair. Anastasia noticed how everything around her was shining beautifully. Alexander noted that she was shining the brightest. The lady thanked him for the invitation to the festival. Alexander was glad that she agreed to go with him. If she launches a lantern from here, it will fly very far, and you can also make a wish. Anastasia wondered if it was really worth letting him go because she would like to keep him for herself. Alexander suggested that she launch her lantern and she could take his. She asked what would happen to his wish. Then Alexander replied that the only thing he wanted was for her wish to come true. Anastasia was embarrassed and suggested going ashore. Alexander did not object. The Duke helped her out of the boat, and then she noticed something. The lady pulled Alexander along with her to buy cotton candy. The festival is the perfect place to eat sweets, but then she ran into a woman. She approached the saleswoman, said hello, and asked for 1 cotton candy. At that moment, Anastasia realized that the main character was in front of her. So she told Alexander that she had changed her mind and wanted to go the other way. Alexander didn't understand why because there was nothing there, but Anastasia insisted that they leave quickly. They were supposed to meet at the funeral, so the girl didn't quite understand why everything was happening so early. The main character takes Alexander away, and she wants to spend the rest of her life with him. Alexander turned to Anastasia and told her to watch her step. When she looked around, she realized that it looked like a fight. Plus, the air smelled of alcohol. It was just disgusting. Alexander apologized for being rude but said that she would have to go with him for a while. Anastasia asked Alexander what was wrong with these people and if they needed help. But he replied that she was more important to him, so they had better leave. They didn't meet Olga again, but those around them continued to stare at them. Alexander brought her to a safe place and said that he would call the guards. In the meantime, it would be better for her to sit here. Anastasia did not object and only asked him to be more careful. Who would have thought that she was more important to him than helping others? It was nice to know that suddenly a stranger came up to her and asked if he could sit next to her. Because all the other places are taken, Anastasia replied that of course she can. But when she looked at him, she realized it was Ash Cloud. The man asked if her partner had left. In the book, he is Alexander's main opponent. He and the main character have known each other for a long time. Anastasia said that her companion would be back soon. She couldn't let him sit down. Ash offered to chat while he was gone and assumed she was a noblewoman. He also noticed that he rarely met noblewomen in such places, and it seemed to him that Olga would like it here, but apparently not. Anastasia was surprised that he had dragged himself along with her, but out of politeness, she asked again if he was alone. He said that he would introduce her. Now Anastasia tried to object, but he had already called her. He introduced Olga to Florence. The girl said that she could be called Anastasia. Olga noted that she was pleased to meet him and asked if she was alone there. Anastasia replied that no, her companion had gone to sort out a fight in the alley. Olga realized that it was probably because of her, because several drunks had also pestered her and did not want to leave. Ash's character is still the same. Olga decided to ask Anastasia if she was an aristocrat. She also added that her partner usually doesn't initiate conversations. Of course, he is the son of a marquis who can smell aristocrats a mile away. She hopes that they will leave before Alexander returns. But hearing his voice, I immediately realized that he was already here. She never expected that right now Alexander would decide to return. Ash asked if he was the one accompanying the girl. The gentleman noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. The Marquis added that there were plenty of drunkards here, and it was better not to leave the lady alone. Anastasia realized that he already knew that she was the daughter of Count Sinclair. Alexander was surprised that he was worried about anyone other than himself. He suggested that Anastasia go somewhere else, which surprised her. She didn't understand why he didn't even look at his betrothed who was standing next to him. She didn't dare ask directly, so she asked if the two of them knew each other. The Marquis asked permission to introduce himself and then added that they had met a couple of times. Olga turned to Alexander, not believing that it was really him. His parents told him a lot about him. Honest, fair, Evgeny, a fencer, and he also knows magic. Alexander only noticed that something like that, Olga decided that fate itself had brought them together and suggested talking. Alexander said that he couldn't. It was time for him to go. Olga did not back down and asked what about tomorrow. After all, they would be looking for lanterns. At this time, Alexander approached Anastasia and invited her to go. Ash laughed. Their goddess had just been ignored. Anastasia felt something strange, looked at Alexander, and noticed that the girl was beautiful. Answered indifferently, "Probably." Anastasia was surprised and asked if he felt his heart beating faster. Alexander replied that he only felt this when she involved him in her adventures. But Anastasia was serious and asked if he had fallen in love with her, or at least felt something. Alexander just looked at her calmly, and then he said that he was not so impressionable as to fall in love at first sight. Anastasia didn't understand how this could be, since Olga was the main character. Alexander noticed that she didn't know him well, and he wouldn't be with someone who saw him as an ideal. It's unpleasant for him, he's an ordinary person. Now Anastasia realized that they were not in a banal romance, and Alexander could also suffer. Everyone sees him as an ideal, but these expectations only put pressure on him. He really is an ordinary person, so Anastasia decided to change the subject and suggested going for cotton candy. Alexander thought that she would start throwing trash around again, but Anastasia pretended not to understand what he was talking about, and then she added that the trash should go in the trash can. The cotton wool has eaten its fill. It's time to go home. A group of people approached them and turned to Alexander because they thought that he was the one who reported it to the guards. And because of him, everyone was fined. Anastasia didn't want anything bad to happen. But suddenly she started coughing again. Alexander, noticing this, immediately ordered everyone to return. The men did not understand why they had to leave, but Alexander seriously asked them to do so. However, they continued to insist that no one ask them. They came for their money. Who knows what will happen to her if he doesn't pay? So the guy decided to agree and asked how much he owed. The man said 10 gold. And then he added that it was 30 per person. They had already gotten on Anastasia's nerves so much that she was going to throw up. The Duke gave them all the money and told them to leave. When they saw his look, they immediately decided it was time. Alexander supported Anastasia and suggested returning to the estate. Some ladies approached them joyfully, greeting Alexander. A crowd of fans gathered around, not believing that it was really him. But the Duke ordered them to disperse, saying that his friend was ill and they needed to go. One boy said he heard he had found a place to live for Martin's grandmother, so it wouldn't hurt his grandfather either. Another man insisted that with a letter of recommendation one could easily become a knight. Many considered him a deceiver, but they still asked for help and food. Alexander asked for silence and stated that there would be no help today. The man wondered why this was so, since the Duke had to do what they said. They also told him that he should take a closer look. This girl was clearly whispering something. Many decided that it was her fault that he didn't help. Those were the drunks, now here they are. Alexander sharply ordered everyone to make way, otherwise they would be in trouble. One grinned and asked what he would do. Would he really start beating up the weak townspeople? The women assured him that he was not like that and would not use force. They all behaved simply inappropriately. It's completely unclear what upset them so much. If he uses force, there will be problems. Anastasia realized that she had to think of something. She attracted attention and announced that she was terminally ill and that the disease was contagious. She doesn't even know what will happen to those who touch her blood, and then she coughed, splashing those around her. People ran away in panic. What if it really was contagious? Some even got it on their faces. They thought she was crazy, but Anastasia didn't think so because they themselves behaved even worse. Now, in her opinion, it has become much calmer. She turned to Alexander and asked why he froze since it was time for them to go. Alexander apologized and then hugged her. Anastasia didn't object. In the carriage, she lay on his shoulder and asked if he knew that it was not his fault. Alexander really wanted her to rest a little because her face was very pale. Anastasia lay on his shoulder and said that he smelled very nice. Alexander apologized again, and the girl said that everything was fine. Alexander couldn't believe it because it all happened because of him. But did she really need to repeat it? No matter how much you say, he will still blame himself. That's the kind of person he is. The lady turned to Irina and said that she was already feeling better because she had slept well. The maid asked not to lie because the mistress's face was still pale. The maid asked him if he knew how scared she was yesterday, and today she wanted her mistress to stay in bed. Anastasia noticed that the maid spoke like Alexander. Irina asked the lady to lie down again, and she would sing a lullaby in the meantime. Anastasia really didn't want to lie in bed all day. She understood that Alexander wouldn't come anyway, so she became very bored and fell asleep. When she woke up, she assured the maid that she really was feeling better and asked to go for a walk. The maid said that she needed to change her clothes and asked to wait a little. The lady noticed that Irina looked tired and asked if she would go with her because it would be better for her to stay at home. The maid can't leave Anastasia alone, and the guards have already reported it. Anastasia suggested another maid, but Irina said that everything was fine and she would rest in the fresh air. It's cloudy today and it's likely to rain in the evening. Anastasia asked the maid if she would like a parfait, since the mistress was treating her. The maid noticed that the mistress simply wanted him herself. Anastasia admitted that it was not without this. Irina is just a servant, so she asked not to worry about her. Anastasia said that she didn't have much time left and she wanted to be good to those who helped her. Irina didn't understand what she was talking about because the lady still had a long life ahead of her. Anastasia was surprised and noticed the stone. The boy said that he had accidentally kicked it and apologized. Anastasia realized that this guy was the one who spoke to Alexander that day. Then the lady asked if he understood what he was doing because not all nobles were as kind as Alexander. The boy asked for forgiveness, for once Anastasia decided that he was just laughing at her. Such people did not deserve her kindness, so she turned away and told the maid that she wanted to leave here. Irina asked where they were going, and Anastasia replied that she needed to meet Alexander. Here is the Duchy of Magnus. It turns out that he lives not so far away. If she introduces herself as Alexander's friend, they should let her in, especially since she won't be there for long. When the guard noticed the carriage, he immediately gave the order to let it through because it was the carriage of Count Sinclair. Anastasia was amazed she was let through so easily. He didn't even bother checking the passengers. Not bad. Maybe their parents were that close. Alexander was in complete shock when he saw Anastasia. She just said hello. Alexander did not understand at all why she went so far because she needed to rest. Anastasia went to meet him. The Duke said that she had better go home because she might get worse. Anastasia was against it, and the Duke asked her to leave because he was not ready for her visit. The lady said that she would not leave anyway because she was unbearably bored. She also decided to ask what about him. The Duke didn't answer, so Anastasia suggested going inside. It was all because she wanted to drink. Alexander didn't mind. Even for the Magnus, who are famous for their wealth, this estate was amazing. Such is the power of the Empire's sword. The services looked very good, and the lady thought about teasing Alexander. Anastasia asked if there was tea. The Duke immediately said that she would receive tea in a minute. The lady didn't think he would cook everything himself. Then she asked for some strawberry jam. Alexander added that he brought her favorite chocolate ganache, as well as dark milk chocolate and sweets with almonds. Anastasia didn't understand at all what was wrong with him because she hadn't warned him about her visit, and she didn't know where all this was coming from. Anastasia said that she doesn't like almonds very much. Alexander immediately promised to remove them. It feels like almonds will never appear in this house again and are unlikely to appear here at all. Anastasia decided to ask what he had been doing before she arrived. Alexander said he was just training. Because of this, the lady began to worry that she had distracted him. Alexander replied that he would not do that under any circumstances, but he was thinking about something. Alexander turned to her and asked her not to consider it rude, but he noticed that she had lost a little weight. He actually advises her to go home. Anastasia was shocked that he didn't like her company. Alexander assured her that this was not true, but if something happened to her because of him, he did not know how he would react to it. He was still upset about that incident. Then the lady said that if she had tired him out, she would go. She will sit for a while and leave, and he will be able to do his own thing. It seemed like nothing special, but she still felt uncomfortable here. The lady was so tired that she accidentally fell asleep and then immediately woke up. There seemed to be nothing in the grass, so everything was fine. Alexander was surprised that she had already woken up. He was just thinking about taking her to bed. Anastasia asked why he didn't wake her up. The gentleman said that she was simply fast asleep. Anastasia noticed something. She decided to take a look at what the gentleman was doing, and when she saw it, she was in complete shock. Anastasia never suspected that he could draw. She saw herself in the painting. Alexander immediately became embarrassed and began to make excuses, saying that he didn't mean to. The girl immediately asked him to draw her nose higher. He was surprised, and she noticed that her nose was indeed higher. When he corrected it, Anastasia was very happy and said that she was beautiful even on paper. Alexander was embarrassed but still agreed with her. She really is beautiful. The lady said that now it was her turn. Alexander was surprised that she decided to draw him. She noticed that he did it very well and wanted to try it too. When the Duke looked at the painting, he said that it was definitely him. Anastasia shouted that he was a complete fool because this was not like him. The Duke said he liked it and asked her to give him the drawing. Anastasia was shocked and realized that he would definitely keep this drawing. And this drawing would be the only reminder of her, so she decided that she would never give it to him. The maid came and said that the master wanted to talk to the lady. Anastasia was surprised and asked again. Friedrich Magnus is Alexander's father. He is also a friend of Anastasia's father, William Sinclair. The two families have been connected for a long time, as was written in the book. Due to Anastasia's illness and constant quarrels with Alexander, the relationship between the families became increasingly worse. But she can't believe that this is a real person. He is handsome, even for his age. She thought that Alexander would be like that too. After that, the guy greeted his father. The Duke asked them to sit down and noted that they had not seen Anastasia for a long time. He also said that the girl had lost a lot of weight and apologized for not visiting her more often. Anastasia said that there was no need to worry, and then Friedrich noticed that she looked much brighter than before. Anastasia admitted that it was all because of Alexander's father laughed. After all, she always got offended when he asked about their relationship. Friedrich decided to ask if Alexander was behaving well and if he was upsetting her in any way. The lady said of course not. Friedrich asked his son to go out for a while because he needed to talk to her alone. The Duke does not want to meddle in other people's affairs, but he is interested in what the lady thinks about his son. This question surprised Anastasia. The main character of this story is her friend, and in 2 years he became the only one with whom she feels calm and secure. Sometimes he is naive like a child, but generous, kind, and sweet even when he is sad. That's why Anastasia said he was very important to her. It's surprising because many people see him as just a kind and fair person. The gentleman asked if he could help with anything. When Alexander was little, his father did not knock but simply came into his room while he was sleeping. Then Alexander would suddenly wake up and start acting as if he was being attacked. The boy threatened to kill them all. Alexander is clearly different from other people. Friedrich cannot tell Anastasia the whole truth, but he said that there is nothing human in his son. He learns quickly, and he only became kind and calm after they managed to instill such behavior in him. Their family went through many hardships to ensure that their son became a good person. But the father lost all confidence when Penelope died. His thoughts are difficult to understand. For now, they can contain the situation. Anastasia asked in horror if Alexander could do something. Friedrich noted that this was not out of the question and that it was simply a warning for her to be prepared. Anastasia could not understand why her father spoke like that about Alexander. In the book, he was described as a rather careless person, and that was exactly how she saw him. If you look at it objectively, he is smart, kind, and quick-witted. He has his father's character. He has almost no weaknesses. Even after a week without food, he will give his bread to his neighbor because he was taught to do so. But there should not be absolutely good people. If they begin to doubt their beliefs, then trouble will happen. This is exactly what he is afraid of. Now Anastasia understands why he is such a kind person. Anastasia didn't know what to do with it. Friedrich said that it was time for him to go and suggested having lunch together sometime. He also wished her a speedy recovery. Anastasia decided to ask if he was worried about her or Alexander. The gentleman said that of course he was worried about her. William's daughter was his daughter. He also asked if she remembered how he asked her not to come to their estate. She doesn't even know how unpleasant it was to hear that. He was ready even if William beat him with his boot. Anastasia apologized, and the gentleman said that he was still glad that she and Alexander had made peace. Friedrich promised to try to visit her more often. Anastasia said that it was not worth it. But the Duke noticed that he was after all her godfather, and that he had a suitable tea set. He is dear even to their family, but he spares nothing for her. Anastasia realized that this was probably the lost national treasure of the empire. The gentleman promised to prepare more gifts. He has good honey, so she doesn't need to worry. Anastasia asked him not to overdo it. When Alexander entered, he noticed that they had been talking for a long time, and so he wondered if everything was okay. Anastasia noticed that the Duke was very kind. Alexander noted that this was good because many people did not like him. One Marquis even spat on their fence when he passed by. He and his father had disagreements about the diamond mine. And by the way, Ash Cloud is that Marquis's son opens in Chichimim in 2 weeks. The lady asked again, and then remembered that it was a holiday and asked if he wanted to invite her. Alexander was surprised that she was ready to go. Anastasia assured him that everything was fine if he had planned with someone else. But Alexander wanted to go only with her, and after the last time he realized how important she was to him. There is no comparison, and now nothing bad will happen. But if something does happen, he won't stand aside. Anastasia apologized for making him worry so much. Alexander believed that it was more his fault than hers, and he was going to make it right. Anastasia was very surprised and asked if he was going to become a bad guy and ignore everyone. Alexander said that if he becomes an evil person, he thinks she will hate him. The girl replied that this was not true and she would never do such a thing. Alexander asked if it was true, and if she would promise him. Anastasia promised that she would not turn away from him even if he became angry. After this, the guy felt relieved because now he could safely litter the street. Anastasia asked if he was going to throw the wrappers anywhere, but he wanted to do something even worse. Anastasia decided to ask if he was going to throw away her drawing. Alexander could no longer remember the last time they poured something together. For Anastasia today, there is only healthy food, and it was a real nightmare. It's all vegetables here. My father asked if they had added too many spices. Anastasia noticed that she always added that, and Friedrich said that she was very similar to her father. The girl realized that he was talking about her father and asked if he wrote to him. Friedrich often receives letters, and if he manages to find out something useful about medicines, he writes immediately, trying to check everything. The Duke has recently received several useful potions, but creating them is a real hassle. It seems that Anastasia caused them a lot of problems. The gentleman said that this is not so because for the sake of his daughter, he is ready to do anything. He also asked her not to tell her father that he called her that because it was a skeleton in the closet that no one should know about. Even he is afraid of anger. Sometimes father asked Alexander to take Anastasia home. After this, the lady said goodbye, and she and Alexander rode off in the carriage. The guy turned to Anastasia and said that he was very glad that she came to them today, because to be honest, he missed her. His father said that if he was kind, people would like him. But Anastasia is not like that. She is the only person who does not demand kindness from him. Anastasia admitted that she knew that the Duke had taught Alexander this, but she was curious about what he really felt and thought. Anastasia decided to ask if he liked helping people immediately when they asked. The guy said that probably not, and then the lady decided to find out why he was doing this because he didn't owe anyone anything. Anastasia didn't understand at all why she had to force herself. Alexander thought that it was normal and that he couldn't refuse. Anastasia confirmed this, although her father did not raise him that way for nothing, and she did not want him to be tied to the role of a good guy. Alexander was grateful that she thought about him. The lady suggested that he work rest and have fun. She also asked if he could visit her tomorrow. Alexander said he would be happy to come. The next day, the lady was shocked that Alexander came so early. The gentleman greeted her and asked how she slept. Anastasia said that it was fine, but she didn't understand why it was so early and noticed that he brought something. His father asked him to give her this potion and make sure she drinks it all. Anastasia didn't understand at all what kind of mishanya this was and suggested simply pouring it out. Alexander apologized, but she needed a drink, and if that didn't work out, he would get her drunk. The girl did not understand how to drink it because she had never heard of a potion of this color. Now she saw it too. Her father said that the effect would be quite good so she wouldn't regret it. In the end, Anastasia decided to have a drink, and Alexander praised her, hoping that now she would feel better. He gave her chocolate. When the lady looked at Alexander, she noticed that they seemed to be wearing the same clothes. Alexander was surprised and asked again. Anastasia answered that her dress and his jacket were the same color. The guy actually noticed it. The lady didn't understand why he wasn't so worried because he didn't seem to care that they looked like a couple. Alexander calmly said that they had been called that for a long time. Everyone asks if they are really dating. When Anastasia heard this, she asked him what he would say to that. The gentleman was surprised that she was interested and said that it was a secret. He fooled her. Anastasia couldn't believe he could do that. Alexander said that it would rain later. If she wanted to go for a walk, she'd better do it now. The lady wanted to eat parfait because she wanted to try all kinds. Alexander could already feel her getting stronger. The potion worked so quickly, Alexander added something to it. The shops are already visible, maybe it's the effect of the potion, but it looks like she could beat him in arm wrestling. People noticed Alexander again and started shouting that he had arrived. One woman came to him and asked for help because the Marquise's soldiers had tortured her uncle. Anastasia asked if they were talking about Marquis Cloud's soldiers. The woman turned to them and said that she wondered how they would behave in front of Alexander. The gentleman turned away and called Anastasia to follow him because there was a cafe nearby. Women asked Sir for help. Many dreamed of becoming great people, but they did not have money for books. There are too many of them today. The lady noticed she saw that guy. It seems he is following her. Alexander thought that she recognized someone, and Anastasia said that it was the child who was following her because she had seen him yesterday. They know each other. He once helped him. So Alexander decided to clarify whether she was sure that the boy was stalking her. Anastasia said that he was apparently offended because they did not help him. It all started right after the festival. The lady decided to find out how he helped her. The Duke paid for 1 year of school, but he most likely did not finish school because he played truant. Anastasia was shocked that he was not studying, even though they paid for him. Alexander asked the girl not to forget to close the windows before going to bed. He didn't want her to get sick because of the rain and wind. She might also be woken up by noise. Someone said that Alexander might give money to beggars. The lady felt that something was wrong here, but the gentleman agreed with her. Among the townspeople were the Marquise's servants, and it is unclear why they needed this. Anastasia had her guess. In the book, Ash Cloud was inciting people to create problems for Alexander. When his crime was revealed, Olga begged Alexander to forgive him. The lady believed that Marquis Ash was behind all this. The Duke noticed that he definitely hated him. It was impossible to forgive him. Ash has always been proud of his noble roots, which has made him cocky and arrogant. However, he had one weakness. The lady decided to ask how long the potion lasted. Alexander said that his power would not fade away immediately. The effect would last for about 10 days. Because of it, her appetite would increase greatly. She would eat even a bag of flour without difficulty. The lady noted that this was good because he was also part of the social club, so she was interested in when the next meeting would be. The next meeting was this Wednesday, and she was curious what he would come up with. Anastasia noted that, of course, she would take revenge. Anastasia decided to act with dignity. Alexander was shocked that she was doing this for him. The girl said that it was natural because he had insulted him and therefore the gentleman, wanted to help her. But Anastasia said that this blow would be too heavy for him if he participated. The one who mocks the kindness of the main character must pay in full. The lady asked if he could help her strengthen her muscles with magic. Alexander replied that he could, but only for a short time. Anastasia said that she would think about it, but she wanted to use his name, so she asked if he minded. Alexander did not object. Her first public meeting was about to begin. When she entered, she met Marquis Ash. The girl immediately greeted him. Ash noticed that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and decided to find out how she was doing. He pretended that they were good friends, but the lady simply told him that everything was fine. Ash apologized and said he needed to talk to the lady. Even now he manages to flirt. Anastasia was surprised that Lady Florence was not there today. Ash noted that Olga was not sociable. If she shows up, she was probably forced to come. The lady noted that she seemed to like Alexander. The Marquis did not understand how it could be otherwise because everyone liked him. Anastasia decided to find out what about him. Ash said he didn't know what to answer since they had known each other for a long time. And anyway, it would be better to talk about something else. Anastasia suggested talking about gifts. She had just prepared one for him. Ash was very surprised to see him, but noted that he was pleasantly surprised. Because the lady gave him a gift, he didn't quite understand what it was and asked if it was a joke. Ash thought she was making fun of him. She must have decided that he deserved to receive this piece of art. The Marquise also asked who was depicted and wondered if she had drawn it. No teacher could have curbed such talent. He was just being sarcastic, so Anastasia decided to ask him what he would give her in return. This confused the gentleman a little, and he said that he had been so surprised by her gift that he had completely forgotten. Then he asked if she wanted flowers. The lady was shocked because he just turned the picture upside down. Something is wrong here. Ash must be a sucker for beautiful girls. Apparently, she really doesn't attract him. But the lady decided not to back down. Anastasia suggested having an arm wrestling match. Ash was shocked and remarked that he must have been so amazed by her drawing that he couldn't hear properly now. Then he asked if he understood her correctly. She wanted to challenge him to a duel, and he didn't understand why. Anastasia wanted to do this so that everyone would know that she was stronger. The Marquise noticed that she had courage, so he agreed. He had nothing to lose. At least she'll see this in her coffin. Not flowers, but spit. Anastasia asked who would even invite him to the funeral. Anastasia turned to the lady with black hair and said that they would have a match and asked her to referee them. The lady was surprised that she was asked, and Anastasia noted that she was there for the first time and did not know names. The woman said her name was Renette. She was shocked that the girl wanted to fight the Marquis because it could be dangerous for her. She had such delicate hands. She couldn't believe that Ash was challenging a girl. She asked him not to think anything was wrong because it was just friendly competition. And if Renee agreed, then they could begin. The woman agreed, and they began. All the ladies were shocked that a woman was able to defeat the Marquis. Ash claimed that she was cheating. Anastasia was surprised and asked what he was talking about. Ash said that Magnus probably used magic on her. Renette didn't quite understand why he thought that she was sure it wasn't so because Alexander wouldn't do that. Others also agreed with her because Alexander is a man of his word, but it was strange that the lady won so easily. Renee decided it was her turn now and asked the lady how about a match with her. The lady decided to try because she was just ready for it. When they started, Renette was shocked that she could win. The Marquis was simply furious. The lady asked if Renette would like to test her strength against the Marquis. The girl, of course, agreed. Renette won, and the Marquis was absolutely horrified. This girl always looked so defenseless. Alexander gave Anastasia his magic, but he didn't just strengthen her body. He also gave her the ability to strip her opponents of their physical strength, and the rumors about his talent are greatly understated. The Marquis did not understand at all what Anastasia did to him. Renette stood against him and could not understand how the Marquis could be so rude to the lady and in front of everyone. Anastasia is also very ill. Ash said that he needs to talk to her. But Renee said that his aggression doesn't scare her at all. This loser talks too much. The Marquis decided that he would not let this go so easily, and they will regret it. The lady told Anastasia to sit down and not to strain herself. Anastasia was very grateful for the lady's care. Renette was delighted when she saw Anastasia's gorgeous smile. She doesn't look like a supporting character, and she's as beautiful as a nymph. When Renette sees beautiful people, she can't keep calm. And really, Ash is nothing compared to Anastasia. There is nothing special about him. Anastasia didn't quite understand why she defended him at all. A black-haired beauty who attracted the attention of those around her with her striking appearance. Not only was she incredibly beautiful, but she could also compete with Ash. Anastasia could not contain her curiosity and decided to find out if she could find out the last name of this amazing girl. The question was important, and she could not ignore it. Renee in turn wondered whether she should reveal her last name, whether she had interested Anastasia enough for her to show further interest. The name of this mysterious girl turned out to be Renette Bliss. Anastasia was shocked when she heard the last name. This name was associated with many rumors and secrets that she heard. The lady was slightly surprised to notice that the girl was coughing a little, but despite this, her appearance remained impeccable, and she seemed even more attractive. After this short pause, Renette hurried off to get some water. Anastasia was completely perplexed, not understanding how this was possible. It was all too unusual. Renee told Anastasia not to rush and not to worry. She warned that this woman is a real cunning and dangerous villain with whom it is better not to mess. Renette Bliss was the daughter of a duke and the granddaughter of the emperor himself. Her lineage was irrespective of how she acted and who surrounded her. She loved beautiful things and collected them. In the book, her character hated Olga because she did not accept her and rejected her, which deeply hurt her feelings and pride. This hatred reached the extreme. Renee even tried to poison Olga and disfigure her face. Anastasia could not believe it. It seemed absurd. Renee said that Ash was also a sucker for beautiful girls, but he has no feelings for Anastasia. Perhaps he is simply afraid of Alexander's wrath, which complicates everything. Anastasia was shocked, but the lady reassured her, saying it was okay, and suggested she forget about it. She had already seen enough of Anastasia, so it didn't matter. It was too dangerous to stay in this place, so Anastasia decided that she should leave as she felt that it was no longer safe for her to stay here. The ladies did not object to the mistress staying, but Anastasia understood that she had to leave as quickly as possible. Everything that was happening here was becoming too risky. But at that moment, the lady called her, and when Anastasia turned around, she saw Renee there, which confused her even more and made her think about what was happening. Renette stated that she had a gift for her mistress, a hairpin which she wanted to give as a sign of friendship and respect, hoping that it would make their relationship closer. Anastasia understood that she didn't care whether she took the gift or not, so she decided to offer something of her own in return, so as not to leave the gesture unnoticed. Anastasia offered to draw a portrait of Renee and demonstrated her drawing skills, showing that her mastery is quite worthy of admiration. Renette, looking at the work, asked if Anastasia knew what she absolutely hated, immediately expressing doubt in her artistic approach and aesthetics. Everything she didn't like was something disgusting, dirty, sloppy, or stupid. Anything that violated her ideals of beauty and harmony could not please her. But for some reason, despite her strict principles when she looked at Anastasia, her anger began to slowly subside, as if there was something special about her. Renette knew that the Count's daughter was a real beauty, and she was very sorry that they met, only now feeling that she could have communicated with her much earlier. For her sake, despite her strict principles, Renee was ready to break her foundations. Anastasia could charm anyone, but death did not bother Renee in this situation. Renette wanted to add Anastasia to her collection. She planned to take her to the basement to enjoy her presence for the rest of her life as a collectible treasure. Anastasia tried to warn her that Renee was going too far in her intentions, but she backed down and apologized, realizing that she had frightened her with her behavior. Anastasia asked Renee to leave, and she readily agreed. After some thought, she decided to try drawing a self-portrait to keep herself busy. Renette asked when she could come pose, suggesting midnight. Anastasia replied that if everything was okay, she would draw her and bring the result in person. Renee said she was looking forward to meeting her Anastasia, only hoped that the woman would not decide to kill her because her intentions were far from clear. Finally, Anastasia returned home. Due to her thoughts of revenge, she completely forgot that Ash was now avoiding communication with Renee, and it was not so important to her. Alexander was sincerely glad of her return. The lady was surprised that he was at her house because she did not expect to see him there. After that, she rushed to throw herself into his arms, sincerely, saying how much she missed him during their separation. This was a manifestation of her weakness. Alexander noticed her fatigue and suggested that she rest at home. He saw how hard this meeting was for her and wanted her to relax a little and gain strength. She replied that everything was fine, and inquiring how long he had been waiting for her, said that she would not waste time changing clothes as she felt that it was not important. Anastasia wanted to go for a walk immediately, but Alexander expressed his concern, telling how much he was worried about her safety and what could happen. He explained that the Marquis could guess her plan and would most likely take revenge. He would definitely not remain indifferent and would act decisively, not missing the opportunity. Anastasia wondered what Alexander had done to the Marquis, since he had always paid attention to beautiful women but had hardly noticed her. Even the villainess was in love with her beauty. Alexander replied that nothing special. All he did was to be near Anastasia, hold her hand, and receive a small but important gift from her. The Duke had raised his desires to such a level that Anastasia felt that simple attention would no longer be enough. This left him in a state of confusion for some time. Anastasia took the portrait that was given to her and was shocked to see how bad everything was. Alexander asked her how she rated her first meeting with the nobles because it was important. She said that the meeting went wonderfully. Everyone was very kind to her, especially Renette Bliss, who showed extraordinary attention and kindness to Anastasia. Alexander admitted that he and Anastasia had met several times already. She bought an albino gazelle, the same one he had shot while hunting a couple of weeks ago. Anastasia wasn't sure if she should be happy that she was the only one who got caught. Alexander simply said that he was glad that she liked everything and that everything had finally come to an end. He asked her to tell him how it all happened. Anastasia thought that he could have seen everything that was happening with the help of magic, but she still began to recount the events. Alexander confirmed that he had indeed seen everything, but he was interested in hearing her story. He suggested that they simply take a walk while they discussed what had happened. There was no sign of that guy today. Anastasia thought that he probably realized that there was no point in continuing and decided to give up without waiting for events. There had been a recent downpour, and Anastasia wondered if he had fallen into a ditch and drowned. It could have all ended so quickly, and she would never have known what had happened to him. Anastasia was shocked by Alexander's words, and she said that it scared her. She hoped that the guy was alive and okay, but she felt that this was not the case. She noticed that Alexander had a strange sense of humor. Suddenly, something caught her attention, and she asked him to look in that direction, hoping that he would notice. There were many small, beautiful roses growing there. The seller, seeing their gaze, immediately greeted them as if he knew that they were supposed to see this particular corner of the street. Anastasia decided to ask him what these roses were called. The seller, seeing her, did not immediately understand the question since she was such a beauty. The lady thought he was overreacting. Then she said she would buy all those flowers. She also asked if they could bring the flowers to Sinclair County. The seller promised to put his heart into them. The lady suggested that Alexander leave, but looking at his face, she could not understand what had happened. Alexander said that she smiles very beautifully at those around her. The lady was surprised because she had never noticed this before and asked if it didn't seem strange. Alexander noticed that she had not been sad or crying for a long time, remembering her illness. Anastasia confirmed that this was true and said that it was no longer useful. Alexander asked if she had come to terms with her illness. Probably yes. But Anastasia did not understand at all what kind of expression her companion had on his face. He felt sad that she had lost hope. Alexander asked if she wanted to ask him for anything. Alexander could do a lot with magic, maybe even heal her. Anastasia asked him to tell her more such nonsense. Magic is not omnipotent, especially when it comes to changing the fate of a person who is close to death. Such treatment will cost not only money, but in the end there will always be horror and disaster. Anastasia said that it would cost him his life, and she did not agree to pay such a price. Alexander replied that if this is not his life, then it could be something else. Anastasia still doesn't agree. Now she wants to ask a question. Anastasia decided to find out if he understood the consequences of what he was saying. Alexander admitted that he didn't quite. The girl asked him to just not blame himself for what happened. It wasn't because of him that she got sick, it was just fate, so he shouldn't interfere. Anastasia felt good with Alexander. It was fun, even if they just sat in silence. She asked if he thought the same, and it was completely unclear why she put his feelings above her own. Alexander himself did not understand. Everyone he had met before considered him the kindest and most honest person. But not Anastasia. Alexander understood what she was thinking and what she wanted. The girl said that she wanted him to rejoice with her, but he did not understand this. The Duke could not understand why the lady thought of him this way because in her situation, it would be logical to be selfish. Anastasia asked him to listen to her because she was tired of repeating the same thing. If he starts talking about it again, he won't talk to her anymore. Alexander froze, and the lady insisted that he answer. In the end, he agreed this guy is really stubborn. Anastasia suggested changing the subject and talking about something else. I wonder if he's worried about her. And so it was. Anastasia thought that he wished her many years. When the girl looked at him, she couldn't help but think that he was very cute. The lady asked him to bend over and then kissed him. Anastasia thanked him for his concern, but said that she was fine. She couldn't judge the past, but now they were connected to the end and added that the Marquis would soon want to spit on everything. The Duke remarked that no one could know since he might not live to see her funeral. He turned to Anastasia and said that she might still regret her decision, but he will still take care of her, so he asks her not to hate him. Anastasia felt very awkward. She shouldn't have yelled at him like that. After this, Anastasia became interested in who she was to Alexander. Maybe she's just his sick friend because he seems to be like that with everyone. But Anastasia felt that he treated her differently. Alexander asked if she would come to his estate tomorrow. Father has prepared a gift for her. He will come to pick her up himself. Anastasia was stunned that it was again a gift from his father, but she still agreed with a smile. Alexander asked her to have a good rest today. Anastasia was surprised that everything was like that. She had heard that nobles kissed hands when they said goodbye. She didn't want to believe that it was just her, but it was interesting. The next day, Anastasia and Alexander had already arrived. Friedrich told the lady to pass. Anastasia was shocked that he also wore glasses. She couldn't understand how the Duke could be so handsome. Now probably my nose will bleed. The gentleman noted that with age you have to wear glasses. Anastasia said that he is so handsome and she wonders what Alexander will be like at his age. She would like to see it. He will definitely become more attractive with age. But Anastasia noticed a strange atmosphere between them. She suddenly remembered that she was terminally ill and said it out loud. The lady replied that she was probably joking and suggested forgetting about it. Just a joke. Alexander told his father that maybe they should go inside already. They arrived and Anastasia was in complete shock when she saw the room. There were so many dresses, probably 100, maybe 2. She never had so many. Friedrich said that there would soon be a celebration for the noble youth, and he had prepared the very best. Anastasia decided to ask how many of them there were. The gentleman didn't even know what to answer because he just bought the whole store. The girl was surprised how he spoke so calmly, as if it was not something important. Everything looked so expensive. The Duke smiled and added that they also bought jewelry. The Duke actually bought more than one store. Anastasia couldn't understand what he was doing. The lady turned to him and said that no matter how rich he was, he shouldn't spend so much, because next time she will definitely refuse. The gentleman was a little upset but asked her not to worry. This is the least he can do for her relics of antiquity, weapons of the sun god. Even the Empire's vast wealth, which could have saved many lives, they found so much, but there was no cure for her, and that was incomprehensible. Anastasia had already said that she had a rare disease. The Duke said that it was not that simple. He and William searched for solutions and found cures for many deadly diseases, but none of them helped except the last potion. Anastasia asked if he was talking about something scary and black. Yes, that's right. But even that would only slow down the process if she knew what it was made of. Anastasia said it was better not to know. Alexander said he had put something special. The Duke interrupted the conversation, offering to choose a dress Gabriella would help. They left, leaving the mistress with 3 maids. Lady Gabriella introduced herself and offered to help her choose the best dress. She thought that the lady would go to Cherished. Anastasia thought that this holiday was very close. Cherished is an ancient story from the far west, a story about a monster that mercilessly devours people, and the ritual in which this creature is created by fire can only be attended by nobles under 18 years of age. For Cherished and the participants perform ritual dances with the victims. At the end, the monster is captured and burned. In the book, everything was described quite cruelly. The girl wouldn't even want to be there, but this holiday is still very popular. The main character regretted not participating. Meanwhile, Gabriella suggested trying on a glossy dress. Anastasia's snow-white skin is ideal for a light yellowish tint. The dress is beltless and simplified for comfort, with diamonds and rubies accentuating the right places. Anastasia decided to find out if Alexander had chosen his costume. The maid replied that she had not, and then she remembered how they were dressed as if they were in pairs. She wondered if he would want to be dressed like that again, but the maid overheard. The maid said that she would immediately ask the young master's opinion. Anastasia asked to wait because she was not sure whether he would like such an idea. Of course he likes it, because he loves paired outfits. The maid said that she and the other servants would confirm that this was so. Anastasia agreed that she should ask. The maid promised to return soon. Anastasia barely blinked, and 7 dresses were already tried on. She was curious when the maid would return. Perhaps he didn't like it. The maids took all the measurements, and Gabriella said that the mistress could ask herself. Anastasia decided to do just that. If he ignored her, she would make him throw away 10 pieces of paper. The Duke seemed to say they'd be downstairs. I wonder why the estate is so empty. There was no one at all, but after searching, the lady finally found them. Alexander spoke with his father. Friedrich said that he would ask him directly why he cared so much about Anastasia. The girl didn't quite understand what they were talking about. Alexander replied that being in the best light was what his father taught him, and he doesn't understand why his father thinks he has ulterior motives when he's just taking care of a sick person. Anastasia was wondering whether she should just leave or tell them something about herself. All this time, Alexander was very kind. The father says this because he trusts him. Anastasia is his friend's daughter, and he hopes that his son will not hurt her. Alexander then decided to ask how his father wanted him to behave. Friedrich said that he himself knew what he wanted from him. Alexander understood that his father wanted him to simply continue to endure all this, and he continued to take care of her until her death. Friedrich noted that he was exaggerating a little once he wanted his son to be with Anastasia. He thought that she would be in a better position with Alexander, unlike other unreliable guys, but now his opinion has changed. If Alexander can't stand calmly around her, he shouldn't go near her at all. The son said that his father was speaking too harshly, and he never let him do what he wanted, and now he asks him to give up. Just because he thinks his feelings are fake, Alexander was shocked to hear that he can't have real feelings. And you said that he just needs to follow the instructions of his elders and he will endure it. Anastasia thought that Alexander would definitely go down now. She didn't understand what to do because she didn't have the strength to leave here. Suddenly, Alexander turned to her and she turned to him with difficulty. She apologized. It wasn't that she was eavesdropping, she just happened to be nearby. Alexander asked if she had found a dress she liked. Anastasia was surprised. She always thought she knew Alexander well. Of course, she already knew what that novel was about. And about what happened between Alexander and Olga. She thought that he would be the way she imagined him. But she had to meet a completely new person, and she missed one important detail. All the events of the novel revolve around Olga, and Alexander's inner world is not described at all. As a reader, she could not see the situation any other way than through Olga's prism. In fact, the main character didn't know anything about him. The guy said that his father wanted to have lunch with her. He was so kind and friendly, but Anastasia still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So she decided to ask him why he was pretending that nothing had happened. Anastasia accidentally overheard the conversation with the Duke. Alexander was not very angry about it. He asked her to try to forget his words. Anastasia was in complete shock because she heard everything, and if his feelings are real, it could be dangerous. Alexander wanted her to just forget about it. He was like everyone else, just helping her out of the kindness of his heart. As before, he would continue to help, and she could enjoy it, even if their relationship was not close. Everything seemed stable, but the lady believed that this was a lie. He also said that he hated helping people and putting himself in second place. Alexander asked again to forget these words. The girl insisted that she could not do that. After that, the gentleman said that they should stay away from each other. Anastasia didn't want this at all, but he noticed that she needed to live a happy life. She had better let him go, otherwise her father's fears might come true. There was sense in his words, but she didn't want Alexander to hate her. He said she would have to. After all, Anastasia had feelings too, and she didn't think his feelings for her were a lie. He claimed she was wrong. Anastasia asked if she was special to him. He said he enjoyed her beauty, walked with her, held her hand. And now he says he felt nothing. The way he worried about her couldn't be a lie. Everything he said when they parted couldn't be a lie either. Alexander replied that it was a lie and apologized for taking advantage of her naivety. He used to worry that he wouldn't be able to survive her death. And now he says she's not important to him. If he knew how much she loved him, he wouldn't have pushed her away. It's strange but not offensive. Now he will never show her his feelings again. Maybe this is her last chance. The last opportunity to tell him how she feels. And Anastasia said that she loved him. She hesitated for a long time. She wanted him to look at her as something special. She loved waiting for him, seeing his smile, even just being around him, the way he listened to her attentively when she said stupid things, and then looking at his embarrassed face when she was talking nonsense. All this brought her real happiness. Anastasia couldn't even count how much trouble she caused him. She was the only one who expected something more, so she was grateful to him, even if it was all a lie. But her feelings are real, and she's sorry it's over. She can't make him love her anymore, and she doesn't want to be a burden to him. Anastasia regrets that she did not become a good friend to him and is grateful for all the time spent with him, after which she needs to go. If she could have lived longer, she would not have given up so easily. If he wants to get out of here, he must take his words as law. Otherwise, his father would kill him. He would not spare him. This was Friedrich's decision, and he tried to re-educate his child. After much effort, he was eventually forced to learn etiquette, moral principles, and good intentions. He was brought up as a reasonable person. Alexander, as his father wanted him to be, never made a mistake. A month ago, she had already heard all the words that were spoken in this place. Maybe hearing more would finally push her away from him. So Alexander decided to try to provoke his father. Anastasia was not an important person for him, but with each passing day, he thought more and more about her. So he has to give her a chance to get out, even if it hurts. For the first time in her life, someone confessed their feelings to him. She felt so good just being near him. He had always been taught to feel anger and resentment towards someone who had betrayed him, so he thought she would be resentful towards him. But she felt only regret. She said she didn't want him to force himself to communicate with her, but he has his own will. Alexander must stay away from Anastasia on his father's orders, or show her your true feelings. The way she rejoiced or grumbled over little things, jumping from one topic to another. She was the one who made him smile. When I talked about my own death, I didn't even cry. Alexander could not even dream that someone so sincere would appear in his life. He was well aware of how quickly his feelings were growing and understood the consequences of this. Alexander would have to become the bad guy, but he decided that Anastasia could be the person who could deal with him. A little over a week had passed since then. The maid asked her mistress if she would continue to lie in bed all day. Anastasia confirmed this, and the maid suggested that she take a walk and eat ice cream. Anastasia didn't want this, and the maid didn't know what to do. The lady lay in bed all the time and thought about the conversation with Alexander. When she dies, Irina will definitely be upset. Everyone will regret having met her. Anastasia told the maid that she did not want to see everyone suffer knowing about her death. She doesn't want to cause any more pain. It's better if she doesn't see anyone until she dies. Irina asked the lady not to say such sad things. For the maid, every day spent with the mistress is important, and she is sure that no one will ever regret the time spent with her. Now the mistress may think so selfishly because she is in pain, and the maid does not understand how she can cope with it. And later the feeling of guilt will become unbearable for them. So she asked the lady to accept the care as before. She doesn't know how one cannot fall in love with her when you see her like this with a beautiful smile. Anastasia was surprised, and the maid replied that it was the pure truth. The lady said that if this is so, then Irina can also fall in love with her if she smiles often. The maid didn't know how to explain to her mistress. She thought that if she wanted, she could make the whole country fall in love with her. It's only a matter of time. This lady's appearance is so attractive, and it's not just her smile. Anastasia noticed that Irina talks about this very often, all because she asks two obvious questions. She decided to leave the lady some black tea and chocolate and then leave. She also asked her to call her if she needed anything. Left alone, Anastasia decided to get out of bed. If she had a choice, she would continue to live, but she doesn't quite understand why she behaves this way. Anastasia believed that it was better for her to cope with this alone than to take strength from others. A week ago, when she came back in tears, all she thought about was him. Anastasia loves Alexander, and he is her first love. It's very hard for him because he's fighting for his freedom, but he has his own secrets that she doesn't know about yet. Anastasia will soon leave this world. She has a maximum of 2 years left. It's better for her not to delve into this. It will all end anyway. Anastasia will have to give up her beloved because she will not be able to take responsibility for the consequences. The maid approached the lady and reported that half an hour ago someone was hanging around the mansion. They say that this woman may be from a noble family, so the lady decided to find out what she looks like. The maid said that she was a very beautiful girl with luxurious black hair. A lady from a noble family with gorgeous black hair, the description reminds her of a villainess she already knows. The guard tried to talk to her, but she kept saying that she was waiting for someone. Anastasia said that she needed to go out urgently. The maid was surprised that her mistress knew her. Of course she knows her, but it's not clear why she came here. And at such a time, Anastasia didn't understand at all why all this. Anastasia was absolutely sure that she had been told that the villain was here. Finally, she found her and called her. The lady was glad to meet her, but Anastasia didn't quite understand what brought her here. Renee just decided to take a walk. Anastasia didn't believe it because it took almost an hour to get here. The girl noted that her legs were so strong that they needed an easy walk, so she came here. Raynette suddenly felt pain in her legs, so she asked her mistress for permission to rest for a while. Anastasia was shocked because she had just said that her legs were strong. Everything looked strange. Renee turned to Anastasia and asked if she was bored of being so meticulous. The girl laughed and agreed to let Raynette come into the house. She didn't know what she would do if she sent her away. Renee was sure that the meeting with her was not a dream. Anastasia's beauty simply drives her crazy. She is real. Anastasia was not at all happy about such compliments. Raynette thanked for the hospitality, but for some reason looked sullen. The lady could not believe that she had upset Anastasia in any way. She said it was nice that Raynette was worried about her, but everything was actually fine. The girl noted that everyone already knew that she had been hanging out with Duke Magnus, but rumors are that neither she nor he left the house together. Anastasia may not answer her questions, but she just likes Renee's face, and she is not going to interfere in her personal life. Renee didn't care what happened between them. Maybe they had a fight or something else, it didn't concern her. She added that she was pretty, and it seemed she had hit the mark. The girl's reaction made everything clear. Cheecham holiday starts tomorrow. The lady was surprised that Anastasia was going to go. She herself was thinking of staying at home. Anastasia honestly admitted that she thought she and Alexander would go together. Renee noticed that they had promised each other to come to the party together. This made Anastasia angry, and she asked how she knew about this. Alexander always keeps his promises. Renee just thought that Anastasia should know about it. After these words, the girl handed her an envelope, and Anastasia did not quite understand what it was. It was a letter from Alexander in which he said that if she still wanted to go with him to the party, he would pick her up tomorrow. Renee explained that Alexander himself came to her and asked her to deliver the letter, so Anastasia was probably glad that she did it. Anastasia, out of joy, called Renee "little sister." She immediately jumped up and asked to repeat. The girl said that her heart almost jumped out of her chest. She was so pleasantly surprised that her head was spinning. Renee asked that Anastasia always call her that. It wasn't hard for Anastasia. Well, they're not that close to call each other that, but why not? Now they can share their most intimate things with each other. Renee decided to start and said that she liked Anastasia's face so much. When Anastasia dies, she will definitely open the coffin to admire her face. Renette admitted that she only likes beautiful people. She added that of course she herself was also good-looking, and if she had not been so strict she would have definitely set her sights on Alexander, but he broke her heart, he was too correct. And then she met Anastasia. The girl noticed that Anastasia's hair had fallen onto the sofa and asked her to take it for herself. The lady said she was interested in something, and Renette immediately suggested asking. Anastasia wanted to ask what Renee thought about Alexander himself. He was an aristocrat from a good family, all noble and without unnecessary flaws. It was difficult to get close to him. He treated people equally, which meant that everyone was equally important to him, and no one was special. Anastasia smiled, noticing that she had described his character exactly. However, Renee noticed that he treated Anastasia differently. When other girls started asking about him, he said that he had a loved one and named Anastasia. The lady said that this could not be because her father was a close friend of the family Alexander, and he was simply kind to her. Raynette couldn't understand why she couldn't get the hint. It all became clear when they started talking about him. Anastasia tried to calm her anxious heart. Raynette noticed that she had come up with a great plan. Anastasia became curious. Tomorrow when they meet, Anastasia should ask what he thinks about her, and she shouldn't worry if he's a man of few words. She's done her job, and now it's time for Renette to go. The girl said goodbye to Anastasia, calling her beautiful. She also added that a black dress would suit Anastasia very well. Anastasia thought that these were probably Alexander's words, but it turned out that this was not so. This was just Renee's opinion. Anastasia also noticed that she probably should go now. Both of Anastasia's dresses looked light and comfortable. In blue, she will look more feminine, and in black, more mature. The maid asked the mistress if she had decided on the dress. The mistress was silent. And then she said that she would choose black. She hoped that her sister would be pleased. Maybe she should have chosen a different dress after all. Suddenly the maid called her mistress. She said that guests had come to see her. It was Alexander. He thanked Anastasia for allowing him to accompany her to this event. Alexander looked simply stunning, and it was impossible not to notice that their outfits seemed to be a match. It was great. Anastasia was very grateful to her sister, and now she could do whatever she wanted with her face after her death. Anastasia decided to find out if everything was okay with the gentleman. Alexander said yes with a smile and thanked her for her concern. The lady noted that he didn't have to come, but the guy replied that she had said she wanted to go to the party. If Alexander was around, she would be able to spend time safely. He was too kind as always. She couldn't believe that all of this was actually a lie. Alexander noticed that she looked upset. The lady said she was fine and was ready to go right away. Either way, he went all this way to keep his promise, and she should be more cheerful. Alexander didn't know how noisy this holiday would be. He said that there would be no adult aristocrats there, and in fact, this was even wrong for such a celebration because quarrels could arise. Anastasia did not listen to him and suddenly turned to him. Alexander was glad to answer. Then she said that they were sitting too close. She found it hard to believe that they were so close. Alexander suggested that if she was uncomfortable, she could move, but that was not what Anastasia was talking about. She saw her reflection in his bright eyes and realized that she had never been so close to him. She couldn't believe it, but maybe it was true. Anastasia said that everything was fine. Alexander smiled and accepted it. She used to be comfortable around him, but now she was all on edge. Alexander was still kind and attentive, but something in his behavior had changed. Perhaps Anastasia imagined too much. Alexander clearly showed that she meant nothing to him. And now they are sitting so close, and it seems that he does not mind touching her. Anastasia has never experienced such feelings. Now she knew what this moment was. She didn't expect it to be so noisy. And she didn't understand why everyone was looking at her like that. It embarrassed her a little. One guy was surprised that she could talk, that maybe she really was a person and not a doll. Anastasia heard everything Alexander asked if everything was okay because her face had become very pale. She was just nervous. She hadn't been in such a noisy place for a long time. Anastasia couldn't understand why even Ash and Renee were looking at her like that. Cheecham through the window, Alexander turned to her and asked if they would like to go out onto the terrace. She thought that this would be good, but suddenly the man called Alexander. He said that he hadn't seen him for a long time, but Alexander passed by, saying that they could talk later. Anastasia still couldn't understand why he put her first. Everything was too confusing. Anastasia began to understand why her heroine did so little outside the home. Besides, she somehow ended up in her body and now has to die so early. The girl thought that she needed to save her strength. Maybe she had come here in vain. The excitement dried up in her throat. When she looked back, she was surprised to see that they were also preparing a table here. She took the glass, but Alexander took it away and said that she couldn't drink champagne. Anastasia was upset because it looked so delicious. She didn't understand what the difference was because he promised to protect her. Alexander was amazed that she still trusted him despite the fact that she had no reason to. Anastasia asked him not to pretend that he had forgotten everything. Alexander remembered everything. Then she decided to ask why he came to her. She needed to ask something important. Alexander turned to her and asked her to look at him. Alexander warned Anastasia that he was not like everyone else and advised her to stay away from him, believing that she could get into trouble around him. As his father said, Alexander should not endanger Anastasia. The girl, however, confidently stated that she felt safe in his company. In the past, Alexander was hot-tempered and did many rash things, which often led to unpleasant consequences for him and those around him. His father desperately tried to change his behavior, urging him that such actions could lead to serious problems in the future. Nevertheless, Alexander assured Anastasia that he was not like that at all now, but at the same time he acknowledged that his efforts to be different were not always justified. He claimed that he did not repent of his past mistakes because he did not feel the need to do so, but rather out of fear of punishment. Anastasia decided to find out what happened in the past and asked him if he could tell her about it. She could not understand what Alexander was hiding so much. Alexander apologized and said that he was not ready to reveal all his secrets at the moment. He could not trust enough to share his past. That day after she left, the father was very angry with Alexander for the promise he made to Anastasia to participate in the celebration. Instead of being careful, Anastasia apologized, realizing that perhaps she shouldn't have said such things. She didn't want to seem intrusive and was a little confused by Alexander's behavior. Alexander, taking her hand, said that he wanted her to make a decision like he did and to act freely without worrying that she owed something to someone. Anastasia, still concerned about his feelings, asked him to be sincere with her because it was important to her that he did not feel obligated by her requests. In return, Alexander promised that he would open his heart if she stopped playing the role and dropped all the pretense that he believed she was using in her relationship with him. He asked her to reject external pressures, her upbringing, and her father's expectations, arguing that only in this way could he be honest and sincere with her without masks. Alexander said that he did not want to continue to distance himself from her, that he was ready to correct his mistakes and not repeat them again, promising to take care of and love her the way she deserves. However, despite his willingness to change, he was worried that if Anastasia became afraid of him, everything he had done would be in vain and useless. Having lost her, Alexander understood that his feelings would dry up, and he would be left alone with lost hope for the happiness that he thought they could find together. He asked her to allow them to see each other more often, even if it was only official meetings, because for him it was a chance to strengthen their relationship. If she did not agree, he was ready to accept her decision, but the girl felt a strange sensation, as if her feelings were no less important than his words. She immediately remembered how Alexander had said earlier that she didn't matter to him, and his words about not letting her die sounded different now. Anastasia thought about it and asked what kind of terrible things Alexander was talking about, not understanding what exactly she should be afraid of in their relationship. Alexander assured her that he would never harm her, that everything he said was just an attempt to explain his inner experiences and complex feelings. Despite all their joint efforts and the development of their relationship, Alexander could not understand when Anastasia would begin to hate him, and perhaps it was inevitable. Anastasia couldn't understand why he was so insistent that she make the decision herself, wondering what was behind it. Maybe he wanted to be closer to her. Alexander wanted her to make a decision that would be right for her, and if she couldn't do that, he asked her to forget about her feelings for him. Understanding his words, Anastasia said that now it seemed to her that if she did not agree with his proposal, their relationship would remain where it was, without moving forward. Alexander noted that it matters to him. Anastasia is important to him, and he does not want to lose her. He is ready to help her make a choice, even if it is difficult. The only way out for Alexander was to push her to make a decision, but he knew that his father would be extremely wary of Anastasia, which complicated the situation. During their quarrel, Alexander felt deep remorse, regret, and uncertainty about what he was doing. He understood that he should not continue in the same spirit. Anastasia had long suspected that the guy was cheating on her. She was sure that he was actually happy to spend time with her, but his words were deceiving her. The girl couldn't believe that he lied so skillfully. Maybe he had always been like that, but now she had to be sure she had to know the truth. The lady recalled that Alexander himself said that she was not special to him, but then he admitted that it was a lie, and his words did not matter. Anastasia noticed that he said that she was the same as everyone else, and then asked for forgiveness again, as if all this could simply be forgotten. Alexander added that his father insisted that he break off all feelings for her as soon as possible, so that it would not hurt so much later, but he himself was not sure about this. Anastasia realized that she was not talking to the Duke, so she noted that her father was right, but she still liked him, and this had already become her own decision. Now she felt a desire to know him more, to understand his true feelings. Alexander in turn said that he would so like to hear the answer she had. It seemed that Anastasia was destined to love him all her life. This feeling overwhelmed her with each passing day, and she could no longer imagine her life without him. Something inside her was starting to change, and maybe now was the moment when they needed to go in and finish it all, before it was too late and their feelings took over. When Anastasia opened the door, she was stunned because in front of her stood not the one she expected. He looked like a beast, and she became scared. The girl couldn't understand how this was possible. She was sure that he should have been in a locked room, but here he was standing right in front of her. After that, Alexander turned to her, expressing concern and asking if the lady was okay. His words sounded serious, but she still could not come to her senses. Anastasia didn't quite understand what had happened, but she tried to calm herself down and said that everything was fine. Something was happening, but she couldn't figure out what exactly. Alexander, turning to Renette, noted that she had had enough time to press the right button. He looked irritated, as if he expected a quick response. The lady reassured everyone, saying that she herself had not expected anyone to be on the terrace, and whether it was so important since the celebration was in full swing anyway. They hadn't planned anything bad. Anastasia remembered the loud roar of the monster and couldn't understand why she continued to move in that direction despite this fear. Surprisingly, Alexander behaved so calmly with her. It was completely different from his usual behavior, and it was the first time she saw him so confident and relaxed. It must have been the real Alexander. Renette noted with a smile that he looked like he was ready to kill someone, and there was no joke in his tone. Anastasia decided that it would be better for her sister to keep quiet, otherwise everything could end badly. She gently addressed Alexander, noticing that his hands and face were heavily stained with blood. Alexander turned to her, smiled, and thanked her. The lady offered him her handkerchief, letting him know that he could use it and go wash himself. Renee said that it was only thanks to Anastasia that she remained alive, and she thought that she would pay for it with fear, but she understood that she would still have to pay. Anastasia, turning to her sister, said that she was sure that everything that happened was planned in advance. The girl did it on purpose, and she was ready to prove it. Renee didn't understand what these words were, because she was the one organizing the celebration, and Anastasia didn't even bother to say hello, although it was clear that there was tension between them. Renette's gaze was filled with bewilderment, and then she jumped out onto the terrace with Alexander. Without waiting for an answer, she still winked at him. The villain was right. Anastasia didn't understand why she had to attract attention in such a dangerous way. She decided to apologize because she was so worried that she felt sick and had to leave. Renee thought about it but then said that she forgave Anastasia, especially since she was wearing a black dress which gave the situation a little lightness. Anastasia didn't find anything funny about it, although she saw Renee grinning. For her, everything that was happening was much more serious than for others. However, Anastasia thought that Alexander seemed to really care about her. Renette often made fun of him, but this reaction was something new for her. Anastasia was shocked to hear how the girl had bullied him in his youth. Renee calmly explained that it was all just childish pranks, nothing serious. Renette remembered the time she accidentally pushed him into a pond and then shared a sandwich with him in which she had put a whole handful of pepper. It was funny. Another time, when Alexander and Ash were about to compete, Renee enchanted his sword, adding an extra 50 kilograms to it, which of course had an unusual effect. Ash intervened in the conversation and asked in confusion if it was a joke or if she was serious. It all seemed so strange that he couldn't believe it. The Marquis was furious because despite all of Renee's tricks, he was still able to defeat Ash. This greatly undermined his confidence and pride. Renee noticed that this was the whole joke. She was interested in watching Ash's reaction, which greatly amused her in this situation. The Marquis couldn't believe that Anastasia had also managed to get so close to Renee. He was clearly surprised because before that he and the girl had kept their distance. Renette was surprised and asked him since when he was interested in such things. In that case, he should be grateful to her for letting him see Anastasia. Alexander couldn't help but notice how beautiful Anastasia had become, and he realized that he had never looked at her so closely before. She literally attracted his gaze. Renette was interested in how he was getting on with his mistress, as she thought she had changed a lot since their last meeting. This remark made him think about many things. When the gentleman decided to leave, Renette could not resist asking him questions, wondering where he was going. She was full of curiosity and could not understand what was making him leave. The Marquis calmly explained that his purpose was to inform the guards that Chichim was dead. His words sounded measured, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened, although the situation was very serious. Renette noted with an ironic smile that his excuse sounded rather cute. Anastasia, sensing the subtle implications, asked her sister not to laugh at Alexander anymore. It was too much. Renette was a little surprised to learn that Anastasia was capable of anger. She had never noticed such harshness in her, but this was only the first sign of her hidden character. Anastasia knew that her time was running out, and so it was important for her to put things in their place while there was still something she could do to change them. Renette, in turn, supported her courage. Renee reassured Anastasia, saying that she shouldn't worry because the villain couldn't do any more harm. She then added that she had something to discuss. Renette, watching her sister with curiosity, asked if she thought Alexander was being overprotective. Anastasia, in her own situation, saw nothing excessive in his care. Renette, as always, noted that Anastasia, being the daughter of a duke, could afford a lot, but despite this, she would never say anything that could hurt her noble sister. Renee had no doubt that Alexander cared deeply for Anastasia. He was willing to destroy anyone to protect her, and even a monster would not be an obstacle for him if it meant her safety. Renee noticed that Anastasia was cruel in her words, and if she continued to behave like this, she would soon be among the next. Renee admitted that she was scared of what was happening. Anastasia, not wanting her sister to continue tempting her, decided to leave and check on Alexander. Her concern for him was sincere despite everything that was happening around her. Later, when the Marquise returned, they would join the others. Renette had promised to send him after them as soon as she returned. Everyone was waiting for this moment, and the atmosphere was tense. Anastasia had no idea where he had gone. She decided to go into the hall to look for him, but inside, she was increasingly overcome with doubts and anxiety. What if he had left without warning? On her way to the hall, she bumped into a strange man. She immediately apologized, feeling awkward about the chance encounter, but his gaze was cold and piercing. The man reacted rudely and said that he did not need her apology. Anastasia could not stand it and asked how he dared to treat her like that. Her irritation grew with every word. Looking at his face, Anastasia suddenly realized that she had seen this man before. His green hair was unlike any other, and she immediately remembered only one. It was the guy who had once been unrequitedly in love with Olga, and Anastasia immediately realized who was in front of her. Her thoughts began to get confused, and she did not know what to think about the meeting. He was among the 5 most powerful people in the empire. His heart was tormented by love that was never reciprocated, and this made him proud and arrogant. His name was Relic Lucretia. Anastasia didn't quite understand what was going on, but the guy, noticing her gaze, asked her not to come closer. He was clearly unhappy with their chance meeting. He explained that he didn't want to be around dirty people like her. His words were like knives, and Anastasia felt her heart clench in pain. Anastasia still couldn't believe that such horrible words were coming out of his mouth. She didn't understand how he could be so cruel, especially considering his situation. At that moment, Alexander approached her and asked what she was doing there. He noticed her tears and asked worriedly why she was so upset and what had happened. Anastasia was glad to see Alexander, but there were tears in her eyes. She asked if he thought she was a dirty person like that guy. The words were full of pain and doubt. Alexander didn't immediately understand what she was talking about. He asked who could have said something like that to her and tried to calm her down, not understanding how it all happened. The girl said that some stranger, without saying a word, simply threw these offensive words at her and left. Alexander asked her to accurately describe his appearance. Anastasia started talking about the guy with green hair. She thought that maybe her face was dirty somehow and that's why he reacted that way. But it wasn't true. Anastasia couldn't understand why he said such strange words, because her face was clean and there was no reason for it. He called her a dirty person for no reason. It seemed like complete nonsense to her because she had done nothing to cause such a reaction. Relic Lucretia, who was always considered pure and gentle, treated the world with special trepidation. Even the dandelions on the roadside were always taken care of by him. But why he called her a dirty person remained a mystery to her. Alexander said that it was not worth attaching special significance to this. Alexander chuckled, calling the guy narrow-minded. He said he didn't even remember what he had eaten 10 minutes ago. Anastasia couldn't understand how he could be so offensive. It was hard for her to get used to this. She was so tired of it all that she wanted to change her clothes into pajamas and just go to bed. Everyone continued to look at her. Anastasia was increasingly doubting whether it was worth being here at all. She didn't understand what was wrong with him because he was the same guy. His behavior made her extremely angry, and she decided to leave, but suddenly someone called her name. This made her stop. Once they were there, the ladies began to joyfully say that they had been waiting for this meeting for a long time, and that finally the lady had come to them. These were the same girls that Anastasia had seen at Ash's villa. She decided to ask how they were doing and if everything was okay. The girls confirmed that everything was so and were eagerly awaiting this meeting. When the lady entered the hall, everyone simply froze in delight, their mouths open. It was obvious to everyone how harmoniously Anastasia looked next to Alexander. They created such an image that it seemed that they were ideally suited to each other. Anastasia couldn't understand what exactly had struck everyone, so people were looking at her with interest. But she was even more puzzled by why they had all turned so pale. At that moment, she couldn't figure out what exactly had attracted all the attention. Alexander was standing behind her, and she decided that his presence could be the reason for such surprise. The girl began to think that everyone's gaze was on Alexander, not on her. The lady next to her noticed that her face looked tired and worn out. Anastasia felt tired, but she did not express it out loud. Alexander noticed her condition and said that if so, she should probably go home to rest. The girl thought that perhaps it would really be better to go back. Alexander promised to take her to the mansion, which calmed her down a little. Anastasia, a little embarrassed, asked if this would not be a problem for him. The Duke assured her that nothing was more important to him than her wishes, and he would be happy to see her off. Alexander was a master of charming people. His words, full of confidence and gallantry, easily captivated everyone, especially the ladies who found his behavior incredibly attractive. Anastasia apologized, noting that her health was failing and she would have to leave her mistress first. This was said quietly, but with an understanding of her weakness. The lady smiled and replied that there was no need to apologize. The main thing was that she was able to attend this celebration, and that was already great for everyone. Suddenly, Raynette approached her, and with slight surprise in her voice, asked why Anastasia didn't say goodbye to her before she left. Anastasia noticed her younger sister and didn't even understand how it happened. She just called her that way, as if she was already used to it. There were no thoughts or doubts in her head. Raynette approached her sister and asked if everyone had heard how close she and Anastasia were. She didn't hide her curiosity and expected that this question would cause some kind of reaction. She added that everyone could envy their close relationship. The ladies advised Anastasia to hold on, as after their last meeting, an anxious premonition arose in her soul. There were times when the lady was harsh with Alexander, especially when His Majesty was present. Perhaps she went overboard with the harshness by interfering with the Thanksgiving competition. Alexander won that competition, and the Marquise, standing aside, could not understand what was being discussed. He was confused because these discussions did not concern him. He wondered why everyone was looking at him like that. Renee explained that Anastasia was about to go home and everyone was there to say goodbye to her. The girl asked Ash if he should also say goodbye to Anastasia, but the gentleman did not understand why he should do this and did not know what to answer. Anastasia, smiling, wished them a good time, but her words caused the Marquise to immediately blush with embarrassment. He had not yet become a real villain. There was still a small spark of innocence in his soul. This was what distinguished him from the soulless creatures he could imagine. It was time for gratitude. The lady and Alexander expressed it for the wonderful evening they had spent together. It was filled with smiles and an unconscious closeness that they both enjoyed. Anastasia turned to Alexander and, with a sincere expression of gratitude, said that she was incredibly happy that he agreed to come with her to this important event for her. She was pleased to think that his words about being frank and honest with her sounded so sincere that she had no doubt about his good intentions. Unfortunately, Anastasia already knew that her illness was incurable. Alexander asked her not to take it too seriously because he understood how difficult it was to be in such a situation. Anastasia, feeling the bitterness in his words, asked if she was mistaken because her death was inevitable. She did not want him to feel sorry for her. She did not need excessive pity. The guy tried to console her, not wanting her to give up. He asked her not to lose hope, but instead to focus on living, putting her feelings first. Anastasia was stunned. He was saying those words again. There were times when his words could make her want to live, but they still didn't sound like what she expected. Alexander told her not to worry. He assured her that he would take care of everything. He was not going to leave her in this, even if it meant taking on the burden of her pain. Anastasia didn't immediately understand what exactly he meant when he said he would take care of her. Then, surprised, she asked if he really didn't understand that all living things are not toys. That evening, despite her bleeding condition, she continued to care for him. He did not notice this, focusing his attention only on her condition, and she did this without expecting recognition. Even when the Marquise insulted him, she was angry and worried as if the insult was directed at her. She could not calmly watch him being humiliated, despite her own suffering. Alexander was sure that for such a noble girl as she, several people would be ready to give their lives without thinking. He could not understand how she could be alone in this world. Anastasia finally decided to talk to him because he started repeating his words again. She believed that it was impossible to justify him, especially if they sounded like someone else's lies. The Duke assured her that he was merely thinking out loud, but he found her reaction extremely amusing. He couldn't help but chuckle at her many doubts. Unfortunately, he said that he would not be able to meet her the next day as he had an important meeting that he could not refuse. The girl was a little upset, but understood. Alexander would be incredibly happy if she agreed to help him and came to his mansion. It would be a great favor on her part, and he would really appreciate her participation. The girl was confused because she didn't quite understand what was going on. He in turn asked what she would do if he did something extremely bad. Alexander did not insist that she give an answer right away because he understood how difficult this decision was for her. He just wanted her to think and not rush. He asked her to just remain his friend because her presence in his life was very important to him. He needed her support and could not imagine life without her by his side. Anastasia felt that she should refuse, but he continued to insist, giving her no peace. She doubted what was the right thing to do, and this worried her. She replied that she herself did not know what to do because she could only make the situation worse, but she promised that she would definitely make sure that her decision was the right one. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to live with the consequences of her decision, especially if something happened to him, but Alexander firmly stated that she was worrying in vain. Everything would be fine. He promised that he would now do everything she asked him to do. Despite all the difficulties, Anastasia felt relief and joy, but at that moment, the carriage suddenly collapsed. The girl was scared to death, and Alexander immediately caught her trying to calm her down. He was surprised by her reaction and asked why she didn't try to believe in him. She promised that she would try to believe him and give him a chance despite her doubts. That moment became the beginning of something new for her, albeit disturbing. They arrived, and Alexander wished Anastasia sweet dreams, his voice warm and calm, as if soothing her troubled mind. He knew the day had been long and hard for her. Alexander left the choice to Anastasia, asking her to decide whether she would remain the same noble and kind woman or choose a different path. It was her decision. He was ready to accept any. But there was another thought in the air. Could Alexander show the world his dark side? And if so, how would that change everything they had built together? The idea troubled him. Anastasia wasn't afraid of these thoughts, but she continued to feel that leaving everything as it was would not be a solution. This was not the path she could choose for herself in the future. Her mind was racing with thoughts of why he was putting her through this roller coaster of nerves and uncertain decisions, why she had to be here alone in this. It wasn't easy. Although she understood that he probably had good reasons for such actions, Anastasia could not get rid of the feeling of injustice. She felt that she was simply being used. No matter how much he said it was worth at least trying, she knew it was best to wait until the next day. Tomorrow would be easier and perhaps the answers would be clearer. Anastasia was thinking about how she could persuade Friedrich Magnus, who was far from giving in to her persuasion. He was not a man who easily changed his mind, especially on such issues. And Anastasia doubted that she would be able to convince him. This left her in the dark. But suddenly at that moment she met Alexander, who seemed ready to support her. When she saw Alexander, her face lit up with a smile and she could not hide her joy. He was the person with whom she felt calm and confident despite all the difficulties. The guy was a little confused by her words when she suddenly suggested visiting his bedroom. He didn't know what exactly she meant because his thoughts were full of questions. Anastasia explained that she just wanted him to visit her room since he had been there before. Her words confused him a little, but he decided to accept her invitation anyway. Olga now thought she could well take a look at Alexander's room. He agreed with a smile, saying that it would not be a problem for her to show his bedroom. He also added with a slight subtext that one shouldn't think that there was anything strange in his room like weapons or especially corpses. Olga was the first female character to appear in Alexander's bedroom, and her impressions were especially important at this moment. The description of the room as she told it was simple. The room was very clean and well kept, as if it had always been kept in perfect order. All of this was the pure truth without any exaggeration, but Anastasia could not understand how the room could be so immaculately clean. In reality, the room was much tidier than she had imagined. Anastasia noticed that it literally sparkled with cleanliness. Alexander said that he didn't like the mess, but suddenly Anastasia noticed something and began asking in horror what this strange thing was. She asked in surprise who had hung her own drawing on the wall. Alexander, as if guarding it, explained that it was a precious drawing made by her. Anastasia was indignant. Her irritation grew, and she realized that it was time to act. Without delay, she decided to do everything right now. Anastasia approached the bookshelf and asked him jokingly if it irritated him. He replied that everything was fine and it didn't bother him. Anastasia quickly realized that this was not some special phobia, but simply Alexander's habit of order and cleanliness. It was his way of keeping everything in perfect condition. After that, she decided to make his bed. Alexander didn't care and didn't notice the changes, but Anastasia continued to make a mess, not paying attention. Alexander couldn't understand what the problem was. He was calm and not worried, but Anastasia was in a slight shock because he didn't care what was happening. The guy offered Anastasia some tea, and she agreed without hesitation. The atmosphere was cozy enough, and she didn't mind a short pause. Anastasia felt like a queen in this house, but the drawing she saw was just awful. She immediately wanted to tear it off and throw it away without thinking. While talking to him, a piece of cake accidentally fell on the floor. She was not going to throw the cake away because it was delicious and did not deserve such a fate. The girl quickly explained that it was an accident. She didn't understand why these cakes were so greasy, and she didn't expect one of the pieces to end up on the floor. Alexander noted that there was nothing wrong with that. However, Anastasia noticed that he said it with some effort, as if he was having a hard time squeezing out the words. Anastasia kept apologizing. She explained that she didn't want anything to go wrong and was upset about what happened. The girl added that she would clean everything up now. At that moment, someone entered the room and the situation changed a little. Alexander's father entered and immediately began to say that he had heard about Anastasia's visit and was glad to see her in their home. He was surprised by her presence. The Duke arrived at the most inopportune moment. He noticed that despite his close relationship with Alexander, entering his bedroom was still too much. When the gentleman noticed that the bed was already made, he immediately stood up and headed for the door. He said that he would not disturb them as he remembered an important matter that required his attention. Anastasia, seeing that he was about to leave, stopped him by asking him to stay. Friedrich, turning to her, noted that their company was cheerful, and it seemed that they had finally made peace. Anastasia, although she expected the Duke to come to scold them, did not think it would happen so soon. He appeared at the most unexpected moment when she was ready for a conversation. This moment was her chance, and she took the plunge, saying that she wanted to talk to him seriously. She felt that this was her only chance to get her thoughts across to him. The Duke, hearing her words, was surprised and immediately asked what she wanted to talk about. He thought about it because Anastasia was the only one who managed to slip away that day, but only Alexander was punished. The Duke was sure that what had happened was his son's fault, and under his influence they had acted as they had. He was firmly convinced that Alexander was to blame for this despite all the circumstances. Anastasia, disagreeing with his statement, said that this was not so. She tried to explain that their actions had nothing to do with her decision and that it was her own choice. Alexander, approaching her quietly, told her not to try to justify herself. He was ready to take the blame on himself, despite the fact that he understood the complexity of the situation and the pressure he was under. He was under the Duke's close supervision, which only added to the tension. But Anastasia was sure that Alexander could not be the cause of all this, even if he was guilty. The Duke continued to consider Alexander dangerous, which only increased the tension in their relationship. However, Alexander kept himself in check, although it was clear that his patience was at its limit. Anastasia, feeling the gravity of the situation, told him that sometimes it was okay to disobey. She didn't want him to live his life in a lie, hiding his feelings and submitting to other people's expectations. The Duke was sure that it was not his business to interfere in the relationship between these two. However, his mind could not help but think about how to find a reason to interfere in their difficult situation. Anastasia admitted that she had overheard the entire conversation that day. She apologized for this, feeling guilty for being an unwitting witness to such frank words. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but she had accidentally found herself where she shouldn't have been. Looking for Alexander, she had gotten lost and hadn't noticed how she had found herself in the middle of this conversation. The Duke understood her and noted that she had probably heard everything in great detail. He offered to help, asking what exactly she expected from him, what he could do for her. The gentleman was ready to do everything to ease her worries and console her pain, but Anastasia asked him for one thing, that he at least once believe her and give her a chance to prove his sincerity. The problems he was so worried about might not actually happen. She asked him to be a little more kind to his son so that those troubles would not become serious. Friedrich didn't quite understand what Anastasia meant. He asked her if she meant that knowing his true nature, she was still willing to be with him. Anastasia confirmed her words. She hoped that her feelings were sincere and that Alexander's intentions were the same. They all took risks, but it was her choice. Anastasia asked Friedrich to give Alexander at least one chance, believing that he was capable of changing. But the gentleman thought that there was no need to discuss this. He did not want to waste time on empty talk. The gentleman does not realize how dangerous he can be to others. Anastasia once told him that he should have at least one person with whom he can open up. This opinion worries him greatly. But the Duke keeps hearing himself called dangerous, and she doesn't know how much longer she'll have to listen to these accusations. In her eyes, he's still the same person he always was. The Duke never tried to check whether anything had changed in his character or inner world. He did not even notice how much could have changed without his participation. Anastasia asked him to use her. She was sure that she would not live to reach adulthood. Her fate was sealed, and she accepted this fact. She was adamant that she would not reveal his secret to anyone. Her words sounded cruel, but the Duke was shocked to hear her say it. He could not believe that she was saying it. The Duke was determined not to use Anastasia. He had always considered her almost his daughter, and this fact did not leave him alone. The girl always knew this, although she did not say it. Anastasia knew that she was dear to him. She always felt it, but she still couldn't resist asking him what would happen if he had urgent matters to attend to. How would he act in such a situation? Or perhaps the Duke would have to part with his son for a long time. She wasn't going to worry about him preferring to leave all these worries to him. Let him decide for himself. Anastasia didn't expect anything else from him. She understood that the gentleman wouldn't want to continue this conversation, so she silently agreed so as not to create unnecessary questions. He sincerely thanked her for her good intentions. When he saw how close she became to his son, he was overwhelmed with feelings. He was very worried about their relationship and about her participation in their lives. He did feel affection for her, but if she felt like she had to do this for him, that wasn't quite true. He didn't want her to feel obligated. In that case, Anastasia decided that she wanted to be able to see Alexander freely. She didn't want it to be done again by order like an electric shock without her desire. Friedrich wasn't sure he could stop following him completely. He felt unsure, but Anastasia understood. She herself had the same feelings as he did for Alexandra. Anastasia was ready to do everything possible for the sake of both of them. The master instructed her that Alexander should not undermine her trust in any way, and she decided to fulfill his request. Alexander assured her that he would never dare to violate the lady's trust. She was grateful to him for this, and felt that his words were sincere and brought her peace. Anastasia felt her attitude towards this issue change. After such confidence, everything in her life immediately became clear and resolved, as if the problems disappeared. The gentleman remarked that since she was doing so well, he had nothing to worry about. He felt confident in her abilities and was pleased with her actions. The Duke returned to his usual state, not very pleased. He suddenly asked if she wanted to get rid of some unpleasant object that was clearly irritating him. Anastasia didn't quite understand what he was talking about, but Alexander immediately asked him to be quieter. He felt that the conversation was going beyond the normal. The Duke could not understand why young people today were so fond of filling their rooms with all sorts of unnecessary junk. It was strange and incomprehensible to him, and he did not hesitate to express his dissatisfaction. Anastasia calmly replied that it was not junk, but her drawing. It was important to her, and she did not want her work to be perceived as something useless. The Duke, upon seeing the drawing, was immediately delighted. He said it was a real beauty. He couldn't take his eyes off it. He was shocked by how she could create something like that. Anastasia, feeling a strange tension, said that it was better for him not to come near her. Her heart was wounded, and she could not forgive what had happened before. The gentleman, after looking at the painting carefully, said that if you look closely, it is really interesting. He saw in it something more than just a picture and was impressed. The painting showed a terrible injustice. It was the image of an ordinary man who lived his whole life for others, but in the end he was framed and executed for something he did not do. Anastasia said that this was a picture of Alexander. The gentleman immediately understood whose work it was and noted that now it became clear to him whose daughter she was. Anastasia asked if she should tell her mother these words. The gentleman immediately answered that her mother often insulted people and it would be better for her to keep it to herself. He apologized for his abruptness, thinking it might be related to something strange like nightmare-repelling images or sensations. His words were sincere. Anastasia suggested drawing him, realizing immediately that he might not be in the mood. However, the Duke noted that it was time to take a break and have lunch before continuing. He tried to avoid answering skillfully, changing the subject. Alexander noted that she most likely had not eaten for a long time. There was something in her appearance that made one think, Anastasia used to be very different from everyone else. It was impossible to approach her because her presence left an impression of something sinister and frightening. She always preferred solitude, avoiding public places. Because of this, she was almost forgotten, and her name gradually faded from people's memories until she disappeared completely. Now everything has changed. She admitted that before her death, she would like to have time to see, hear, and experience as much as possible, that she did not have time to experience much. Now he understands why she became the way she did. Selfish. Despite this, her changes were not noticed by those around her, even if her oddities became obvious. With her laughter, she was able to calm those around her, and those who previously could not find a common language with her now often admired her calmness and goodwill. Alexander thought that she needed time to rest because the last few days had been extremely difficult for her. He understood that she was very tired and needed rest. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was a maid who announced that Marquis Cloud had arrived, an important figure who was always involved in the events that took place around him. Balthazar Cloud was a man with a tough character. He was a man who valued only money and power, always striving for more without regard for the feelings of others. His father would never have invited him to his mansion. A man like Balthazar always solved problems by force, and his methods were known to everyone who was associated with him. Alexander couldn't understand what he was doing here. He wondered why the Marquis needed to show up. After all, the exit was on the other side, so they had to leave. The Marquis was taken aback by the Duke changing the door to the mansion. He couldn't understand why he decided to do this because everything was arranged differently, and this confused him a little. Balthazar decided to ask if he knew what he was imagining. He wondered if maybe really every time he came, the Duke always had new doors. It seemed strange. He assumed that the Duke changed the doors every time he passed through them. The Duke, smiling calmly, confirmed that this was so. It was his little ritual. Balthazar noticed that the Duke had become silent. He clearly did not want to talk more than he had to, and it seemed that he had no desire to chat. That was enough for today. It was time for him to leave. The Marquis was surprised to hear that the Duke had guests. Friedrich calmly explained that it was his daughter. The Marquis did not understand what was being discussed, but decided not to ask unnecessary questions. Balthazar did not immediately understand who they were talking about, but then he remembered that it was the same girl terminally ill who had once been mentioned in conversation. This surprised him even more. He still couldn't understand why the Duke called her his daughter. After all, she was William's daughter, and that didn't quite fit his expectations, but he didn't go into details. He failed to take the Marquis aside, as he had wanted. Alexander came up and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. This again attracted the attention of everyone in the room and was an unexpected turn. Narcissus met Alexander with surprise and said that he had already thought that he would never see him again. It turned out that he had worried in vain. Soon he realized how happy he was to see him again. What a blessing that Alexander was not at all like his father. He became better each time, and Narcissus was sincerely happy about this, noticing his changes with surprise. The Duke asked why the man had come at all. Balthazar remarked that they would be very surprised when he told them, since he had recently acquired a very unusual holy relic. It was, he said, interesting. The Duke listened to him, but in response said that it was enough to boast and suggested that they leave already. He was not impressed by these stories about the shrines. Such trinkets, according to the Duke, can be found anywhere. The maids often throw them away thinking they are trash and throw them away, not thinking that they might have any value. The Marquis asked him to wait, as he could not talk to him right now. To whom and what exactly needed to be explained did not matter. Time played its role. These ancient relics are said to be able to predict the future, plunging a person into hallucinations. He was not 100% sure, but there is a possibility that these are relics of Anastasia himself. He himself understands what value such artifacts can have, and this gives him a chance to be the first to see them. He already felt his heart beat faster at the thought of the future. Maxim, watching the Duke, began to joke that he would probably even be able to look into the future and find out what would be for dinner. The words sounded light, but with a hint of a real task. Matis, noticing his doubts, asked if he was going to miss such a rare opportunity. The Duke asked in response where Anastasia was. Now his interest was still there. Alexander replied that Anastasia was resting. Apparently, she was very tired after yesterday's celebration because she always tried to maintain a joyful atmosphere for everyone around her. His father finally allowed him to see Anastasia more often, and the boy was shocked when he heard this. He couldn't believe that he had received such freedom because he had never even dreamed of such meetings before. His father insisted that he go home. After that, the boy went inside and felt his mood gradually begin to change because he couldn't wait to meet her. The first thing he needed to do was change his clothes. He always felt the need to do this after interacting with people who, in his opinion, invaded his personal space without permission. He didn't like it when people considered it normal to touch him. He felt uncomfortable, and any touch, even accidental, was perceived as a violation of his boundaries. But he couldn't express his feelings openly because it could cause unpleasant consequences. Instead, he endured and always changed his clothes to feel a little better. You always had to endure, but one person was an exception. For him, it was not so hard, and he could even allow himself to forget about his habits and barriers. Alexander entered the room and immediately realized that Anastasia was not sleeping. He apologized for waking her because he did not want to disturb her peace. Anastasia reassured him, saying that everything was fine and he didn't have to worry. The Duke quickly suggested that they change their clothes and leave so as not to disturb her rest. He apologized again for disturbing her sleep. He finally finished all his actions and felt the tension gradually leaving room for ease. Anastasia didn't quite understand why he was changing his clothes again. Alexander explained that he was a little dirty, and that was an important reason for him to change his clothes. The lady noticed that his clothes didn't even look wrinkled. They looked perfect as always, and it made her wonder why he was so worried about every little thing. Anastasia added that she sincerely regretted that she had spoken so much to the Duke. She was worried that he might have been offended by her and considered her words unnecessary. Alexander assured her that this was not the case. He was sure that she was doing this for his sake, and although his expression might look stern, in fact, he understood her intentions. He agreed with her. He didn't want Anastasia to give up and wanted to awaken in her the desire to live despite all the difficulties she was going through. However, her next words gave him pause. She claimed that this time would be different and asked for a chance, saying that he could rely on her. Anastasia, looking at Alexander, invited him to sit down next to her. She smiled, hoping that he would be comfortable, and there was a slight insistence in this gesture. The boy explained that Marquis Cloud had arrived at their home. Anastasia thought that this event had been planned in advance and probably did not cause any particular surprises. However, Alexander noted that his father would hardly have invited the Marquis himself. He did not recall any cases when he came of his own free will or invitation. Anastasia thought that the Duke was simply showing concern for the Marquis Cloud was currently performing the duties of Count William, which probably explained his presence. He wasn't particularly knowledgeable about business, but he had a lot of enthusiasm. So far, no serious problems had arisen, and he maintained a positive attitude. Father tried not to show his irritation, but all he could do was wave his hand and answer the Marquis's questions with boring phrases, avoiding discussion. Anastasia thought that perhaps the Marquis was really helping her father. Maybe he was performing some duties that would improve their family's position in the future. All this was done for the sake of possible future benefits, but in addition, the Marquis clearly sought to secure recognition from her father, and this was noticeable. Whenever he found something valuable or received a rare item, the Marquis would immediately rush to boast to his father, just as happened today. Anastasia decided that she should also go down and greet the Marquis. Besides, her father had been forced to leave because of her, and she felt responsible. Alexander tried to calm her down, saying that Anastasia shouldn't feel guilty about leaving. He tried to relieve her of unnecessary tension and guilt. Before his departure, the Count himself chose his successors, but rumors reached him that they all refused as the Marquis put pressure on them and threatened them in case of refusal. Now, however, no one wanted to become his successor because the Marquis really put pressure on the people and they preferred to retreat, despite the possible benefits. Anastasia was surprised to hear this and said that if this was really the case, she doubted that the Marquis would be able to profit from it as he wanted. Alexander seemed to think that the Count was also aware of the situation. When he learned of the problems with the Marquis, he sent his father a long letter asking him to look into the situation. Alexander couldn't believe that there were so many offensive words in the world. Anastasia smiled at his reaction, realizing how much it hurt him. Anastasia looked tired, and Alexander noticed that she probably wanted to rest in the bedroom where the Count and Countess had once stayed. Although she was slightly sleepy, Anastasia was not worried. She still wanted to spend as much time with him as possible, not letting fatigue take over. Rest is really important. Anastasia, feeling how conversations about family had drawn her thoughts in, admitted that it made her miss her parents. This was not surprising because she always valued moments with her family. She often wondered when they would return. Every day her expectations grew stronger. She knew that they would soon be together again, and this gave her hope. Anastasia felt how much she wanted this moment to come as soon as possible. The time spent without her family seemed long and painful to her. She already realized that if the right medicine was not found that could cure her, then she would not be able to meet them. This thought was hard for her. There was no medicine that could help. She knew that even the most experienced doctors could not help her in this situation, and it was painful, but still she dreamed of seeing her family at least one last time. It would be of great value to her despite everything that was happening to her health. Alexander noticed her strange behavior and asked Anastasia if something important had happened. He felt that something was bothering her. Anastasia said that Duchess Blythe brought home something amazing and invited everyone to see it. It sounded like something unusual, and she was interested in it. It was about a relic that Marcus Cloud had recently acquired. He was holding a viewing, and everyone was waiting to see this mysterious thing. The last time the Marquis came was only to show this relic. It was important to him, but everything seemed strange and inexplicable. Although there were doubts about its authenticity, many believed that it could be a genuine relic that belonged to Anacleto himself. This added to the intrigue. Anastasia asked again, because they say that if a thing really has such power, it can affect the human mind. It was exciting and mysterious. It was said that if a powerful priest touched the relic, he would be able to see the future. It sounded like magic, but was it real? At first it was possible to glimpse such trivialities as what would be for dinner, but sometimes, according to rumors, it was possible to see even into the distant future. The possibility was tempting, but remained dubious. However, many claimed that even if the priest used all his power, he would still not be able to see into the future. Their power did not match the relic. It was strange. Anastasia noticed that Alexander was also invited to this event, but he showed no interest. She was surprised why he was not interested. He explained that firstly, there was no certainty about the authenticity of the relic, and secondly, he did not believe that it was possible to really look into the future with its help. Alexander wasn't sure if it was just for fun, but he was worried that other people might seriously believe in such magic. He didn't like it. His biggest fear was that he might get dirty or sick from contact with the relic. Anastasia laughed, thinking that he was just a paranoid person suffering from mysophobia. For Alexander, it was a waste of time, but Anastasia needed communication. He thought it was a good opportunity to establish relationships with other young girls. Alexander asked Anastasia not to force herself under any circumstances. The girl added that Renee was bothering him, not giving him any peace, preventing him from living peacefully. Alexander is already used to such situations, but when Anastasia starts to get upset, he hides his feelings even more, pretending that everything is fine. Then Anastasia turned to him and suggested that he not hold back his emotions. It doesn't matter whether they are positive or negative, you need to be honest with yourself. She didn't believe it would lead to anything bad, as his father feared. Sometimes it's important to let your feelings out so as not to hold them in. Anastasia saw how patient and diligent Alexander was. He hid his true emotions all his life, wanting to please those around him so that everyone would praise him for his good deeds. But in her opinion, this was not enough to become a truly kind person. He wondered what if she was wrong in her approach. He knew he had already made a mistake and there was a chance he would repeat it. But what if his attempts to control himself were hiding a desire to impress her? Anastasia didn't understand where this problem came from because he pretended almost his entire life. Even if he hides his feelings, he still likes her. She didn't expect him to change instantly for her. He had to understand that it was important to be real and not continue to hide his feelings behind lies. It's normal for her that people go through trial and error. After all, you can't reach your goal without making some mistakes, but if he tries for her, she's happy. Anastasia noted that everything starts with small steps. The guy emphasized that his mistakes are not as harmless as hers. His problems are more serious. The girl thought that he just needed more practice. When he holds all his emotions in and then spills them out, it becomes a problem. If he learned to release his emotions little by little, it would help him avoid excessive mood swings and get on the right path. Everything will work out if he starts to socialize controlling his emotions. You need to hide a little, or on the contrary, show your feelings a little more. The main thing is to balance. With Alexander coming of age, it was the perfect time for a change. Anastasia told him to get ready because she planned to test his nerves. Alexander was in complete shock from what was happening, but the lady calmed him down, assuring him that there was no need to worry. She could handle his anger if he showed it. Anastasia said that she would tell Alexander herself if he overdid it, but until then she was ready to endure everything Alexander promised that he would not show her his anger. Anastasia just shook her head silently, repeating that they would live and see. At that moment, Renee came to her, ready to take her with her. Anastasia was shocked that she had not received a letter from Renette. She had said that she was not going to go, and this came as a real shock to the Duchess. The Duchess could not understand how Renette could say such words because they hurt her. She promised herself that she would not hurt Alexander anymore. Renette asked for just one chance to prove that she was much better than her mistress thought of her. It was her sincere wish, despite her past. Anastasia, who had read many books, understood what Renee was capable of. In addition, Renee had already told everyone that she was going to come with Anastasia. The others must have been waiting for their arrival. Renette smiled and noted that her little sister probably liked her face, but that was not the main thing. The Duchess laughed and replied that sometimes she really thought that her face was the reason for her thoughts. Sometimes she herself did not understand how hard it was for her with it. Renee apologized, adding that her soul was much deeper and that Anastasia was interested not only in her appearance but also in her personality. She tried to be frank. It was so unexpected. Anastasia thought that Renee was just waiting to take her body and stuff it. That idea was shattered at that moment. To understand her, Anastasia began to follow those who were closest to her. She was truly interested in how Renette managed to conquer the heart of the great Alexander. Anastasia was so free and uninhibited that her behavior did not surprise him. She was very important to him, and he knew for sure that he would never betray her. Renette once asked him if he remembered the moment when she confessed that she had been pestering Alexander. Anastasia immediately got angry, and Renette felt that this was the end. Renette hadn't even dared to amend her invitation, and now it seemed she was ready to throw her out the door for coming at that moment. Everything was so tense. Anastasia asked if it was normal to be angry because of another person. Was it strange that she was so upset? Renee felt that this was not a normal situation. If they became friends, Renee would like to allow herself to show such feelings for Anastasia, to be open, not to hide her emotions. But for now, it seemed difficult. Anastasia noted that it didn't necessarily have to be her, but there was so much conviction in her words that Renette felt a little uncomfortable. Ash once told a story about how he and Alexander were at a festival of commoners. His stories were always full of details, and Renee could not forget that moment. The people who were nearby demanded something from them. Anastasia defended Alexander so fiercely that his blood almost spilled. Renee remembered all of this. Renee was delighted with Anastasia and wanted to know her better. She also dreamed that Anastasia would protect her in the same situation as she did with Alexander. Renette noticed that no matter what speeches the Duchess made, she always had one goal. She knew exactly what she wanted and never deviated from it. Everyone is worried because they can't find a common language with Anastasia, but for her it's not a problem. She understands perfectly well that everything is going as it should, everything is fine in her world. Renee suggested that Anastasia trust and become the most prominent figure in social circles. It would be useful for her because she could always be in the public eye, and it would be good for her. It was all a bit awkward for Renee. She couldn't understand how Anastasia could make her behave so openly without thinking Anastasia decided to leave. Renette, not understanding why everything was ending so quickly, asked her to stay. She couldn't bear the thought of losing her so easily. Renette was on the verge of tears. Renee realized that she had better change before going out. Everyone was probably already waiting for her. She didn't want to be late and get into another awkward situation. It wouldn't take long and Renee asked to wait. She hoped that Anastasia would understand her correctly because she just wanted to return the favor for her frankness and openness. Anastasia wanted nothing more than for the Duchess to stop bothering Alexander. She had given her word, and for her that was enough to complete her duty. Anastasia also thought that Renette should stop talking about social circles. She could not attend such events often since her health was far from ideal, and she quickly tired. At such moments, Anastasia did not understand how she could offend people. She did not know how to be the center of attention and not cause discontent, not cause unnecessary trouble to those around her. At one point, the Duchess turned to Anastasia and said that she did not want to do anything more for her future. She believed that her days were numbered and her life was about to end. On the way to the palace, Anastasia noticed that Renette, although she said she could answer the question, was still nervous. Anastasia decided not to dwell on it. Anastasia could hear her voice shaking, but she didn't think about it. She realized that it was better to leave everything as it was and let her head not get filled with unnecessary thoughts. Although she knew that this girl could be treacherous, her greeting was impeccably friendly. The ladies greeted her and the Duchess with real warmth. Anastasia, in turn, also said hello, smiled, and asked how they were doing, trying to keep the conversation going. The women were grateful for her attention. The ladies noticed that Larissa's outfit suited her perfectly as always, and Blair looked very cute with her bangs cut. Anastasia sincerely praised them for their changes in appearance. The answer was sincere, although the ladies understood perfectly well that the compliments were not made for nothing. Still, they knew that someone did not notice these efforts, and this was strange. Larissa could not hide her disappointment. She gave a gift but did not receive an answer. 3 days had already passed, and the silence left her at a loss. The ladies, noticing her discontent, decided to ask Anastasia if Alexander was the same. This question made the lady feel uncomfortable, but they continued. Alexander is so attentive to her, maybe she likes it. All this was said with a slight hint, and Anastasia felt a slight embarrassment. Anastasia blushed at such questions, but at the same time she was pleased that they were paying attention to her. She felt a little awkward, but inside she was happy. Sometimes she felt like her feelings and reactions were too strange, that she might be some kind of pervert. This made her doubt her own desires. Renette suggested ending the conversation and going inside to look at the relics and ask about them. She was determined to learn more about these items. Luckily, her sister helped. It was indeed a palace they were heading to, and Renette felt that this place held many secrets and historical mysteries. Larissa wasn't sure that the relics could really show the future, but Blair herself was also amazed that these ancient objects had survived to this day. Perhaps the Duchess knows how the Marquis was able to find this relic. Renette had no idea when she received the invitation from the Marquis's son. He did not say a word. He did ask one thing, though. He wondered if Renee could bring Anastasia here, which left her with questions and a bit of a surprise. Anastasia and Alexander. There was an atmosphere of love around them. Ash would probably get in their way, because they wanted Anastasia to be with the most suitable man, the best for her. Anastasia felt like she was being protected like a sister. Blair couldn't help but ask if Anastasia had had any relationships before. It was all a little awkward for her. Then Blair asked about her lover, and such questions greatly embarrassed the lady. She did not expect to be questioned like that. It made her feel uncomfortable. Anastasia felt very awkward, realizing how seriously they were talking about this. She felt her naivety and innocence, which only increased her embarrassment. The last time she was with him in public was when they attended the Cherished festival. They probably made fun of them then too, but Anastasia chose to forget about it. They seem to have embarrassed the lady a little, and they will not ask her about such things anymore. They also asked her to be careful with men like Ash. Anastasia couldn't believe that she was making such an impression on someone. She thought that her questions were being taken seriously, and it confused her a little. However, this was not entirely true. Anastasia looked great next to Alexander, and everyone supported their relationship, while apologizing for their rudeness and concern. Her family was now very far away, and the Duke was her godfather. If anyone had said anything bad about him, it would have been hard to believe. Blair asked Anastasia if she was afraid of accidentally hurting Alexander's feelings, but she replied that her worries about this were not worth paying attention to. If only she knew how many girls Alexander had rejected, it would have become clearer to her. He was so unmarked and pure that it was hard to believe the rumors about him. Anastasia couldn't deny it, because in her own eyes it was convincing everything that was said was true one way or another. In fact, Anastasia was not well, she felt weak, but the Duchess, her mistress, insisted that she come here despite her state of health. Blair noticed that such a girl definitely deserved Alexander's heart. However, the lady could not understand why such conversations were started at all. It seemed unnecessary. Raynette stopped the girls, insisting that they should listen to her advice if they intended to continue in this spirit, as the situation required caution. If someone accidentally overheard their conversation, it would be difficult to understand what exactly was going on between Anastasia and Alexander, which could give rise to unnecessary rumors. Anastasia still did not feel deep feelings for Alexander, and therefore such conversations only embarrassed her, making her feel uncomfortable and nervous. She always wants to intimidate and tease them. She dreams of creating misunderstandings between them, plunging them into doubts so that they cannot understand their feelings. And as soon as this happens, Anastasia, all in tears, will run to her. She will hug her tenderly, console her, and say that there is no one in the world that can be trusted. That night, she will become part of her collection, again, added to the others. Anastasia does not suspect that this is only the beginning of what awaits her in this world. Anastasia always believed that such things should not be said out loud. The ladies noticed that it was time to leave because the bells were ringing and time was passing quickly. Renee approached Anastasia and whispered, asking if she had ever thought about how much he loved her and how it could affect their future. The Duchess replied that if he offended her a little, he would instantly decide without hesitation to kill her. This was not just a threat. It was a real danger. Renette was 100% sure of this, even being the daughter of a duke and the granddaughter of an emperor. She felt a threat to her life in every look and word. She couldn't imagine what would happen if someone else hurt her. Remembering the events at the festival, she couldn't help but notice that he was completely different then. As soon as Anastasia called out to him, he returned to his previous state, reserved and calm. The girl was sure that Alexander would never harm anyone. Raynette remarked that if only she knew everything about him, because even she had no idea what happened to him after the festival and what happened to him next. It's an amazing ability. Everything seemed fine, but as soon as she got to the mansion, blood started pouring out of her nose. The situation was rapidly deteriorating. Renee made a lot of efforts to stop Anastasia. The girl did not understand what was happening, thought that Renee was just joking, playing on her emotions, and did not take it seriously. Anastasia was stunned. She couldn't believe that someone's death could cause such feelings in someone else. Children came up to them and asked what they were talking about, but she couldn't understand because of the loud ringing. Raynette said with determination that they must see the relic as soon as possible. She believed that it would open the way to Anastasia and Alexander's future, perhaps provide answers to their questions. Blair was disappointed because she actually missed something important. All this time she felt like she was the odd one out and worried that she didn't make it in time. Anastasia turned to her sister and asked why she had decided to tell her now. The ladies continued to say that they needed to catch up with the others because they were running late. Raynette doubted that it was caused by anything in her presence. Perhaps the girl had simply been poisoned, but she couldn't say for sure what had caused it. Anastasia was skeptical, considering everything that was happening to be some kind of absurdity. Renee seemed to have just come up with this explanation, thinking that it would sound logical. Of course, neither she nor Anastasia wanted to die so early. Both decided not to take any more risks, realizing that they needed to be more careful and not get into such situations. Anastasia wasn't even sure that this girl realized how absurd her words were, so she got irritated and couldn't take her behavior seriously. She decided to ignore it. However, Renette assured them that everything would be fine, that the lady would live for a long time. She reminded them that it was time to go so as not to waste time. Walking down the corridor, they finally came to the right door. Renee confidently informed Anastasia that they had arrived and that the relic was hidden behind this door. Anastasia noticed a familiar priest named Raleigh Lucretia. His face was already familiar to her, and she could not understand what he was doing here and how he was connected to their search. She wasn't quite sure why he was looking at her so intently again. It was odd, even a little alarming, and it made her think. Blair introduced her to Raleigh, who turned out to be a very important man. He had been entrusted with this valuable relic, and he seemed completely absorbed in it, as if it were coming to life in his hands. If you pay attention to his face, you could see how deeply he was studying the lady Anastasia. Not knowing what to do, only said that she was pleased to meet him. The priest suddenly turned around and said that he would open the doors for her. She was amazed by his words. It was a surprise to her, a complete mystery. Renette thought his behavior was too rude. Even if he was a respectable priest, ignoring Anastasia's greeting seemed extremely improper to her. Nevertheless, the gentleman said that he was also pleased to meet you, but it was unclear why it was necessary to show so clearly that he did not want this. Anastasia, deciding not to dwell on the strange behavior, said that she would rather examine the relics. She was irritated, considering his behavior senseless and stupid. The relic was sacred, capable of showing the future. Anastasia expected to see something like a magic mirror, like in fairy tales full of secrets and miracles. But when she looked at the object, she realized that it was not at all what she imagined. It looked more like an ancient sarcophagus than an object capable of showing the future. It was obviously old, worn by time. The priest offered her to try the tea before entering. It was all so unusual that she could not believe her eyes. In rare cases, the body may reject the divine, but the priest strongly recommended checking this in advance before moving forward. Blair could not understand how the human body could reject something divine, because it was in fact the purest and most sublime thing that existed in the world. 500 years ago, when the idea of the church was just being formed, a woman accidentally touched her father's clothes and instantly burned up as if she had been engulfed in flames by the divine power itself. This event was the result of divine influence. Later, when the woman's body was examined, it was discovered that she was an ordinary person without magic or any special abilities. She was not a master and did not have any special powers. This knowledge stirred up a feeling of anxiety and goosebumps in everyone, because what had happened seemed completely inexplicable. Anastasia couldn't understand why that man was talking about this without taking his eyes off her, and even insistently offering to drink the potion, which clearly didn't inspire confidence in her. She decided that his insistent gaze was because he wanted to see her body burned alive like that woman. It made her feel uneasy. At this time, her friend was trying to figure out what this strange drink tasted like, not understanding why Anastasia was so reluctant to try it, even afraid to drink it. The tea was so bitter that Anastasia could barely drink it, but she thought she could perhaps cope with it by adding about 8 cubes of sugar to smooth out the taste. Renette was surprised by Anastasia's habit of adding so much sugar to her tea. She promised herself to remember this fact, hoping that it would be useful to her someday in the future. Sister Renette, although not always aware of the possible consequences of her actions, was always sincere and kind to those around her, especially to those whose attention she wished to attract. Anastasia, among other things, also loved to eat something fatty and spicy. These taste preferences could say a lot about her character and tastes. Then the lady realized that she should treat Anastasia to a dish that she would probably like. It seemed that the priest had been very busy lately, because Blair did not remember him being at the last Cheecham festival. Apparently, the person Blair wanted to make a good impression on was the priest. Anastasia felt a strange uneasiness. The priest reminded that if everyone had finished drinking tea, it was time to enter. There was no additional security in the room. Renee noticed that Anastasia was clearly not ready for this. She admitted that she did not want to discuss her feelings, but suspected that it could ruin the whole atmosphere. The Duchess then suggested that Anastasia was afraid of facing her own dead body lying in a cold grave, and this thought caused her fear. She might see a future where she has to give her own funeral eulogy. Anastasia said she doesn't understand why everyone cares about her when she just wants to have fun. Renee didn't want to force Anastasia to do anything against her will. However, she was so sweet, and just a few days ago she said she was ready to look into the future, and now she changed her mind. So the girl decided that it was better to go through all this quickly, touch the relic, and then everything would be over. She understood that nothing could be changed. If you get closer, you can see the inscriptions engraved on the surface. Renette noticed that the layer of dust was too thick, as if no one had touched it for a long time. She doubted whether the relic would work if she simply ran her fingers over it. With these thoughts in mind, the girl decided to touch the ancient object. Renee exclaimed that it seemed like her dream would soon come true and expressed her joy to Anastasia, anticipating that everything would finally work out as they dreamed. Together with Alexander, they will pay homage to this place, and at dawn, she will steal the body. Everything seemed so real and impossible, but they decided. But then the lady waved it off, saying that it was just a joke. She wanted to make fun of her friend a little, and it was nothing more serious than just a game. Anastasia doubted whether a villain like her could understand what true friendship was. Bewilderment about how things really were appeared on her face more and more often. Larissa, having touched the relic, immediately became frightened. Anastasia, having noticed her condition, began to ask if everything was okay with her and if something terrible had happened. The lady looked a little confused. She admitted that she was scared to the depths of her soul, as she had experienced such vivid sensations that she could not even understand what was happening to her. It seemed like it was all real. Now it was Blair's turn, but Renette said Anastasia had to go first. Everything went in order and no one could change the order. The girl had long since gotten used to the idea that death was inevitable, but seeing it with her own eyes was a completely different experience, and it scared her. Seeing your death so close was terrifying. Even someone who had thought about his end many times was not ready to face it. Larissa suggested that Anastasia leave if she was afraid. If she didn't want to continue, they could just leave this place, but the decision wasn't as easy as it seemed. But if Anastasia runs little sister, Renee won't be able to stand it and will laugh at her. She always reacted that way to weakness, and Anastasia knew it very well. Anastasia prepared herself and a little nervously touched the relic, but she did not feel anything unusual. There was no spark, no excitement, no sense of special power. The priest, surprised by her reaction, asked her to show him her hands. He hoped that perhaps she had not noticed something important, but he did not find anything strange on her palms. The gentleman, noticing her confusion, smiled faintly and said that such cases were quite rare. He added that most likely she was just unlucky and there was no need to worry. Anastasia was shocked that it was so serious and could not understand what exactly had happened. She asked him what the relic had actually shown, if he had not even touched it. Blair noticed that the priest was turning very pale, which was clearly not normal. She became concerned and asked if everything was okay, but the gentleman reacted harshly, ordering everyone to leave the room. The whole situation was moving too fast and they had to leave right now. Blair apologized to Anastasia, trying to calm her down, explaining that the priest was actually a kind man. Larissa, watching what was happening, thought that she liked the priest, but Blair quietly said that she always felt so calm next to him. There was a strange and unusual confidence in her words. The priest was always humble and caring, and Blair added that she liked Laurel. He soon gave her a sapling. He had grown himself, which was a very important gesture for her. Renette, noticing her thoughtfulness, asked if everything was okay with the girl. She understood her feelings and wanted to support her, asking if what was happening was some kind of misunderstanding. A girl shouldn't justify a man who made a mistake. She saw how rude he was to Anastasia. It was completely unacceptable, especially in front of a lady. Anastasia couldn't understand why she was so protective of her. It seemed like the Duchess wouldn't let anyone judge her, not even giving them the slightest opportunity to speak. Anastasia agreed that the Duchess was right, and the priest was indeed mistaken. Blair said that she would go and make sure to ask him to apologize to Anastasia. Larissa also decided to leave because she had her own business, so they left the place, leaving Anastasia and Renee alone with their thoughts and experiences. Raynette was relieved that the destroyers were gone. Anastasia was in complete shock because she was the one who invited them, not expecting such problems. If Anastasia had suggested going for a walk together, she would definitely not have agreed. Renee chose girls who could keep their mouths shut and would not arouse jealousy. But Raynette did not expect the priest to do so. Anastasia, having relaxed a little, said that she felt better and that she would give Raynette a ride to the Duke, which surprised her. Raynette couldn't understand what she was talking about. As soon as they got there, they would go to the Count. Raynette asked if Anastasia understood that her appearance didn't matter now. Anastasia ran quickly, her steps faltering from panic and fear. She stopped abruptly when she saw Alexander, who was holding her lifeless body. He smiled, saying that he said that sooner or later he would kill everyone. All his mistakes, which at first glance seemed small and insignificant, in fact turned out to be much more serious than those made by Anastasia. Her mistakes almost never led to catastrophic consequences. When Anastasia woke up, she felt unbearable pain in her hands, as if fire was penetrating every cell of her body. She began to scream in pain, calling Irina for help, hoping that someone would hear her. A maid burst through the door with concern in her eyes. She hurried to Anastasia and asked what had happened, why she had screamed in the middle of the night, disturbing everyone in the house. The maid's face expressed concern. The maid was in complete shock when she saw Anastasia's bloody and wounded hands. Without wasting any time, she immediately began to bandage the wounds, trying to help her as quickly as possible and ease her suffering. Yesterday, when Renee sent her home, Anastasia was so pale that she could barely stand on her feet. As soon as she got to her house, she immediately fell into bed and fell asleep, exhausted by everything that had happened. Anastasia had never thought that fatigue could be so painful. She had heard about it in the temple, but she had never imagined that she would ever face such consequences herself. The temple said that more than 500 years ago, a girl who touched the priest's clothes was burned by the incredible divine power that emanated from him. These were terrible and mysterious events. Rayleigh kept glancing at Anastasia, especially when she was drinking tea. He watched her hands closely. His gaze was persistent, as if he was looking for something special in her movements. He was definitely hiding something, and Anastasia felt that touching this mysterious and enigmatic object could be dangerous for her, although she could not understand why. The Sinclair family had always been ordinary, without any notable features. This only increased her confusion because nothing in the family tree could explain what was happening. Anastasia could not understand what was happening to her body. The maid, having examined her, said that in her opinion it was just a burn, but the mistress herself doubted it. Despite the fact that the medicine was applied, there was no improvement. The condition remained unchanged, and Anastasia continued to feel uneasy. Irina thought that it was necessary to send a letter, but the lady was against anyone knowing about her condition. She did not want anyone to know about her problems. All this happened because Anastasia had to figure out the situation herself. Soon morning came and she waited for Alexander to arrive. In her dream, Alexander was wearing a terrible, sinister armor and was killing everyone she cared about. She saw him carrying the dead Anastasia, and it was a frightening and terrifying vision. She became curious. What if all this really happened after her death? If the relic showed her the future? Questions tormented her, but she did not know the answer. However, Anastasia was sure that Alexander would not do this. It seemed impossible, and she tried to calm down despite her disturbing thoughts. She greeted Alexander, noticing that he had arrived earlier than usual. This seemed strange to her, and she decided to find out what could have caused his early arrival. Alexander also greeted her, explaining that he had come early because he had not seen her yesterday. He looked worried, as if something was bothering him. Alexander noted that the lady looked ill and assumed that she was ill. Apparently she was overtired because Sister Renee sent her home after the previous day. The lady noticed that Alexander was so observant that it was sometimes annoying. He couldn't help but notice that she was wearing gloves, which immediately caught his attention. Anastasia turned to the side and noted that he had not yet had breakfast. She was alone and could not help but ask him to join the table, although she was not entirely happy with his presence. She was curious about how he would react when he found out the whole truth. She knew that his reaction could be unpredictable, and this worried her a little, especially his attitude. Perhaps he would try to keep his distance like the priest avoiding her. She couldn't understand why she seemed so repulsive and why even the divine power rejected her. Alexander asked a question regarding whether Rayleigh Lucretia was again in the same mood as before towards her, despite everything Raynette tried to imagine them in her imagination. The Duchess seemed to really like her, judging by the fact that she invited several more girls to avoid any unpleasant situations and to keep the atmosphere from becoming too tense. Anastasia suddenly asked him what he would do if she died. The gentleman thinking suggested that this object was some kind of relic that predicted a future where she was no longer. She quickly explained that this was not so, and that she had simply seen a strange dream which had greatly surprised her. It was not a prophecy, but only a vague, inexplicable vision, but it had alarmed her. Alexander, noticing her confusion, asked her to tell him frankly what she was eating now. This was a question that interested him, because he noticed that she could not quite concentrate. Anastasia was surprised by his request. She admitted that she could not taste the food at the moment, and this added to the strangeness of her behavior. Alexander suggested coming to her and asked her to stop chewing. The girl did not quite understand why all this was happening. Alexander apologized to her, explaining that he was a little worried about her condition. He was sincerely worried. Alexander pulled something strange out of her mouth, and Anastasia couldn't figure out how it got there. Everything was happening too suddenly, and she was confused. He promised that he would not insist that she tell him what had happened. He was willing to wait as long as it took to make her feel better. But despite his promises, Alexander could not get rid of his anxiety. Anastasia noticed how he was looking at her intently and anxiously, which made her feel uneasy. However, the Duke did not understand why he was so worried. It all happened soon after her arrival at the palace, and she probably felt ashamed of what happened, which was natural. Now Anastasia understood why the priest had called her dirty. She began to realize that there was a reason why she was being treated like that, as something low, as a failed body. Alexander asked her to show him her hands, but she refused. She could not let him see what was troubling her, and she did not want him to see her weakness. The Duke didn't know if he could help her, since Irina had already taken care of the wound, treating it with medicine. He only hoped that his actions would ease her suffering a little. Alexander believed that she would feel better if she showed him her wound, and told him how she felt. Anastasia understood that he sincerely wished only the best for her. She didn't know that if he thought it was really terrible, it would make her feel even worse. Even she thought it all looked extremely strange and unpleasant. Alexander assured her that she should trust him. Anastasia felt very embarrassed because she did it only to help herself. Everything seemed so terrible, so creepy and abnormal. Alexander asked her if she really thought he cared about it. In response, the girl expressed doubt that perhaps she was possessed by something evil. Alexander did not believe that this was so. He was sure that there were no supernatural forces here, and everything could be explained much more simply. Anastasia thought that if she listened to him, all her worries would be nothing, and everything would become much easier. In the end, she agreed. She asked him to come with her to the bedroom, where she felt relief as she removed the bandages from her hands. Everything was much easier than she had expected. Alexander noted that perhaps not all was lost. Anastasia felt relieved because she had long known that everything would be fine. Alexander was sure that he could help her because he really had experience in this. The girl decided to ask how he was going to do it. Without further ado, Alexander used magic. Anastasia couldn't believe it, but it turned out that most of the problem had disappeared, and she didn't expect that. She was curious and wanted to know how exactly he had managed it. At this time, the Duke asked Anastasia if he could meet her. Anastasia replied that if we are talking about a priest, then she does not see any problem in meeting with him and discussing all the issues. When Anastasia saw Alexander's face, she felt that something was wrong and decided to ask him what exactly he was thinking at that moment. She became curious about what he was hiding. Anastasia hoped that Alexander did not intend to harm the priest. She was worried that his actions could be much more dangerous than she expected. Alexander noticed that perhaps he understood something, but was not ready to share these thoughts. He decided that he would try to persuade the priest to find out everything peacefully. His intention was to resolve everything without violence. However, at the moment, he was much more interested in learning the details of Anastasia's strange dream. Anastasia, in response, said that this dream did not have any special meaning. When she reached for the gloves, Alexander unexpectedly took them away, deciding to wait for their return. He calmly stated that he would only return the gloves if she told him about her dream. He emphasized that it was important for their future events and what was to come. Anastasia realized that she couldn't object and decided to tell about the dream. When she touched the relic, nothing happened, and she woke up with pain in her palms, feeling a strange anxiety. However, she did not tell Alexander the whole dream, realizing that some details might be too strange. Alexander asked if she thought it was a sign of the future. Anastasia did not believe that her dream could predict the future, considering it simply meaningless. But despite this, she was surprised why she still felt a sense of rejection from what was happening. Anastasia's burns were not too deep, although Alexander knew that when the body rejected divinity, it usually burned instantly. It shocked him, but he remained calm. Before Alexander could use healing magic, the burns began to heal on their own. It seemed that her body had recovered, but the process was slow and difficult. There was apparently something divine in Anastasia's body. It was simultaneously destroying and restoring her, but the girl herself could not understand this strange process. She wondered if it was possible for femininity and divinity to exist in her body at the same time. The divine self was strange. It loved her and hated her. Anastasia felt that the deity wanted to hurt her, but Alexander did not believe that it wanted her dead. He did not understand why this was happening and why it was so hard for her. Alexander tried to calm her down, assuring her that he would do everything he could to protect her. He was sure that no one would judge her for having something special about her. Anastasia had to learn to accept her uniqueness, and although it was difficult, she felt that Alexander would always be there to support her. Even if she decided to do something bad, he would be there to help. His support was unconditional, and Anastasia realized that he would always be with her. These words greatly embarrassed Anastasia. She did not want Alexander to say such things, although her heart was touched by his devotion and willingness to be there. It was fresh and pleasant outside, especially after Alexander had carefully treated her wounds. The cool air made her feel better, and the pain gradually subsided. Alexander wondered whether he should go to the priest right now or maybe wait. He wasn't sure if it was the right step to take. Anastasia asked him not to rush, but just to be there. She noticed that everything had changed recently, and she couldn't be there for him like before. Alexander tried to calm her down, reminding her that his teachers had given up long ago. He didn't need to study anymore because he had already managed to comprehend a lot, including reading his dissertation. At some point, Anastasia remembered that he was a genius. He even began to look through medical books to help her understand her problems. It suddenly occurred to him that her life was full of chaos, despite her refusal of bad habits. He noticed how she continued to do things that were harmful to the body. He decided that she should establish a daily routine of going to bed and getting up at the same time, and also start eating whatever she wanted, salty, sweet, bitter, without giving up food. Anastasia didn't want to hear it. She was sure that she had been eating normally until now, when her stomach hadn't let her down, and she didn't need to change her habits. Alexander realized that there was no point in continuing this conversation. He knew that no matter what he said, she would not listen to his advice. She would still do it her way. At some point, he decided to ask how many hours she slept at night. Anastasia answered that she hardly slept because her thoughts were always occupied with Alexander. Perhaps she was dead in that dream, and that was absurd. Alexander's father was also among those killed in her vision. It seemed absurd and impossible. Alexander could not understand whether this dream had any relation to his future. Anastasia assured him that it was just a dream that had no real meaning. He said that if she died, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself because he wouldn't be able to save her. At some point, when he realized that he had lost her forever, it would be unbearable. Hearing his words, Anastasia hugged him, saying that now he did not need to continue because she believed him. Her words were full of support and silence, as if they understood each other. Alexander remembered the promise she had made to him. She had said that she would not hate him even if he ever became a terrible person. He wanted to make sure she remembered. Anastasia decided that for the sake of peace of mind, she would ask him what he himself understood by a terrible person. She was curious how he himself saw this image in his life. Alexander replied that a terrible person was like trash strewn across the street. It was a strange relief that she could still speak and understand what he was saying, despite all the seriousness. He added that this garbage could be much bigger than she imagined. It was not just a disordered state, but something much more complex and threatening. The girl didn't think it mattered whether he was tall or short. In her eyes, it didn't matter what he looked like. The main thing was that even if he was bad, she would accept him with open arms. She said that she would try too because she realized that she had about 2 years left. It was not much time to do something important and significant. She felt that there was too little time to do everything she wanted. She wanted his sadness to decrease with each passing day and for him to feel less pain. She dreamed of seeing his smile at least once more because such simple at first glance banal things gave her strength. Alexander reminded her that she had once promised him to be kind. Anastasia asked him not to be afraid of offending her. She was really very attached to Alexander and dreamed that they could be together, hugging each other until the end of her life. Alexander seemed to have known about her feelings for a long time, and Anastasia wondered how long he had realized this. He knew her much better than she thought and understood her on an intuitive level. Anastasia decided to ask him how he knew he liked her. He asked if it was really that important to her. Her questions seemed almost like a riddle game to him. She told him even the smallest things. How many birds she saw outside the window, how sincerely she smiled at him, and how her gaze followed his every move. It was always important to her. Every time before taking his hand, she took a deep breath. Alexander noticed all these little things, and it was they that allowed him to understand that she really felt something special for him. Even if Anastasia tried to deny her feelings, her face, her every look and gesture spoke of something completely different. All this was given away in her behavior without requiring words. It seemed that the girl was very carried away by emotions, but Alexander, despite everything, said that he felt the same. He felt that they had something special between them. He said he was ready to share with her not only the important moments, but also the daily routine. It would be enough for him to just see her happy. That would be enough. Alexander often thought about how ideal it would be if she didn't know about all his mistakes. The lady hoped that everything that was happening was not just part of a dream. Alexander had no idea how much he could love Anastasia. Once he was with her, he realized that his feelings were much deeper than he had ever imagined. Amazingly, everything remained in its place, and it was as if only one event had made the world around them more beautiful and brighter. It was something unusual and important for both of them. Besides, the old storylines have long since changed, because in this case Alexander did not fall in love with Olga at first sight. He went through a different path, not so obvious and fast. Instead, he told her that he would always be there for her no matter what she did, that he would support her no matter what she did, and that she would change for him. Anastasia had to at least try to fight what was destined. She could resist fate. Try to change the course of events, but it was not easy. Alexander decided it was time to go and she should rest and eat. He said he would return tomorrow with medicine that would help her feel better and recover. Anastasia, curious, asked if he meant that awful soup she disliked so much. She didn't really want to deal with him again, but she was ready for him. The lady said that she would never eat it, deciding that it was not the best idea, so the young man, without wasting any time, suggested that they go for a walk after that. If she felt well, they could go to the outlying areas of the capital. Sometimes, of course, it is worth allowing yourself such small pleasures as this. He knew exactly how to please her. The archbishop greeted the gentleman with joy, especially since he decided to visit the temple in person, which always brought special joy. Alexander noted that they had not seen each other for a long time and apologized for not coming so often. The man, without taking offense, replied that this was quite natural since the gentleman was busy. The archbishop was sure that God saw the sincere faith and devotion of the Magnus family. He was convinced that the Duke always showed concern for his family despite the difficulties. However, it was not only about faith and devotion. The most important thing was the donations. Before they started helping the temple, the situation was completely different, and one could only dream of luxury. The archbishop suggested looking around the temple had been completely restored thanks to the generosity of Duke Magnus. It was noticeable. Every detail spoke of new possibilities. But the archbishop went to get that painting himself. It was a real work of art, very ancient and valuable. He was sure that this work was worth a lot of effort. The gentleman was sure that the Duke had already heard about this painting, so Alexander decided to take a closer look at it. It was truly an impressive work of art. Alexander, noticing the interest in other paintings, thought it would be interesting to look at them too. The Archbishop noted that the gentleman really had a keen eye. The Archbishop suggested looking at the works brought from Songchahan. One of them was connected with a tragic story. 500 years ago, a girl who grabbed the sacred cloth died. This event became a legend, and every time he remembered it, Alexander felt sad. He could not help but ask the Archbishop why such a tragedy had happened. The Archbishop thought about it, saying that perhaps something dark and terrible had attracted the girl's attention, making her unable to bear the divine radiance. It was certainly a sad story. This young man was an example for everyone. His talent was immeasurable. Despite his colossal wealth, which exceeded the wealth of the entire empire, he remained sincere and modest. This man always showed respect to those around him, regardless of their social status. He would be the ideal messenger of God himself on earth. Lucretia approached the Archbishop and reminded him that he wanted to see the master. The man was glad because he had finally come, and the meeting promised to be important. The Archbishop thought that without any introductions, he already knew about the dear guest, because rumors about him had long reached his ears, and now all that remained was to meet him in person. The Archbishop insisted that the priest greet him properly, but instead, the priest suddenly ran away. It seemed so unexpected that everyone around froze. The gentleman apologized, somewhat confused, explaining that the priest was not such an ignorant person as he seemed. It was just that his health had deteriorated significantly recently. He went on to explain that his illness had made him less receptive to events, so his reaction was unexpected and even strange to those around him. Coming closer, the gentleman carefully asked if he seemed rude to him. He was worried that perhaps his words could offend someone, although he himself did not feel rude. Lucretia, noticing his approach, shouted at him not to come near. He was sure that Alexander was deliberately provoking him, but Alexander himself did not notice anything reprehensible about himself. Alexander knew that the Duke could be an extremely dangerous man, even if someone just accidentally irritated him. He could kill at any moment, and his rage was always destructive. Alexander asked if he had any proof that he was the murderer. Lucretia followed him closely and found out that everyone who tried to find out the truth disappeared or went crazy. The Duke did not understand what he was talking about. He asked Alexander to wait a little. He assured him that he would soon get to the truth himself, and soon they would both see how right he was in his suspicions. Alexander didn't want to overdo it, but deep down he felt he couldn't just stop. His desire to get to the bottom of this matter was stronger than his warnings and doubts. The priest thought that Alexander could actually kill him right there on the spot. However, Alexander himself decided that if he succeeded, he would do it in the most painful way. Anastasia was shocked that there were many more ingredients in their preparation than the previous time. She did not expect such a change and could not understand why it was necessary. Alexander confirmed her assumption, adding that not only the quantity but also the quality of the ingredients had been changed. He said that this was a necessary step to achieve the desired effect. The girl didn't agree with this. She thought he shouldn't have done it because he just wanted her to stay in his circle longer, but this drug turned out to be the only thing that could help. Anastasia knew she couldn't refuse him. When he looked at her with that innocent look, she couldn't say no. His eyes made her lose her will. The girl still felt an unpleasant taste in her mouth that did not go away. Alexander noticed that she had eaten almost a dozen chocolate bars, and now she felt sick. The taste was so bad that even chocolate couldn't overcome it. It prevented her from enjoying ordinary things. Every breath she took was filled with this taste. However, after taking the medicine, she felt a little better for a while. Although her condition did not change much, she still felt more cheerful than before. Her hands were still shaking, but as she thought about it, she heard Alexander calling out to her, his voice clear as if he was trying to wake her up. Yesterday he was in the temple. Anastasia was very surprised when she asked him if the priest called him a murderer. This question worried her, although she could not understand its meaning. She did not understand why the master spoke like that. He said that the priest considered him too radical, and conversation with him was impossible because he believed that the master saw the future. Alexander had no doubt that his destiny would inevitably lead to him becoming a murderer. This was his confident opinion, and he saw nothing unusual in it. Anastasia considered his thoughts to be complete nonsense and asked him to look at her. She could not believe these prophecies and simply did not understand why he was talking like that. Anastasia trusted him, and it was not connected with her personal feelings. She was sure that what the priest said would never become reality, would not happen. He certainly wasn't perfect, but he was trying to improve. Anastasia decided to support him and do everything so that his efforts wouldn't be in vain. Alexander was so glad he had her. Deep down, he knew that all his troubles and mistakes would come back someday, but for now, he was happy with this moment. Anastasia was also happy, but there was a worrying moment in her soul. He didn't kill that guy only because he didn't want to disappoint her to fall in her eyes. Anastasia was surprised by his actions, but still decided to praise him. She understood that he hoped for her approval, but she did not think that such an action was worthy of praise. Alexander hoped that she would understand him. At that moment, Irina approached the lady, interrupting their short conversation. The lady had said that she was going on a long journey. Anastasia felt anger and disappointment when she thought about Alexander's actions, his rash decisions. The guy suggested postponing their meeting for the following week. He explained that he had important matters to resolve with his father, and it could not be delayed. He should have informed about this in advance. Anastasia did not quite understand why His Majesty the Emperor was calling the Duke, but it worried her. Anastasia couldn't understand why he decided to discuss it right after he took the medicine. Alexander didn't think she could react to it like that, and if he had said it earlier, everything could have been different. In fact, she had taken the medicine in anticipation of their date, confident in the sincerity of his intentions. It had been a moment of hope and anticipation that she had not expected to be marred. In the original version of the plot, it was often mentioned that the emperor was dependent on the Duke's family, but Anastasia could never have imagined that this would somehow affect her fate or influence her life. Despite this, she decided not to stop and find a new place to meet. At that moment, a maid came running to her who said that a letter had arrived from the mistress and it needed to be read urgently. The letter said that everything was fine, that she missed him very much, and that everything would be fine. Soon, Anastasia realized that she needed to stay calm and continue to act like the caring mother she had always been. Everyone around her was looking for ways to find a cure for her illness, and so meetings with them were impossible in the near future. However, Anastasia continued to believe that the situation would definitely change. Anastasia's family always seemed alien to her, but over time at some point she began to feel how much she missed them, although before their relationship was cold. As for the main character's real family, she never felt close to them, did not know their love and care. Since childhood, she was sort of removed from them. Anastasia did not understand how this happened because it seemed to her that she had already come to terms with the fact that her family would not be able to give her the love that she so needed. She couldn't understand why now that her life had turned out its own way, she was still so strongly drawn to strangers and missed those whom she had long considered strangers. Now, having understood all this, she realized that she was beginning to become a real Anastasia. Everything that happened to some extent changed her inner world, gave her a new perception. Throughout her life, Anastasia had always felt distant from her family, especially when her illness prevented her from being close to them. With each passing day, this distance became more and more noticeable. However, she definitely wanted to be closer to them. This feeling was gentle but strong. Somewhere deep in her soul, Anastasia felt that these were her true emotions and desires. At some point, she realized that she should give in to these feelings and not isolate herself. She wrote a letter to her mother telling her that she was fine and that she often saw Alexander. On Alexander's advice, she changed her diet and began to watch her nutrition. Now she often sat at the table of the Duke's family, where she was served only green dishes. Lately, Anastasia has become madly in love with chocolate. Thoughts about finding a good pastry chef now visit her almost every day, and the desire is becoming stronger. When the letter was ready, the mistress put her signature on it and the maid could take it and send it. Everything was decided and all she had to do was wait for an answer. The lady thought about whether she should write to her brother and father. After all, her relationship with them was not simple, and she was not sure whether her mother knew about their last conversation. Their last meeting had ended on a bad note, and Anastasia didn't know if they were aware of what had happened. However, she was sure that they were still upset about it. Anastasia's behavior was too impulsive, which was explained by her fear of being left alone in an unfamiliar house, far from her familiar surroundings and the support of loved ones. She couldn't forget about it, and after thinking about it, she decided that she needed to write. The whole evening and night were spent trying to express all her thoughts in a letter that was supposed to change something. In the morning, when she woke up, she felt extremely sleepy as she had hardly slept. But despite her fatigue, she managed to finish the letter, although it was already late when she finally finished it. Anastasia thought that 10 pages was too much for a letter, but Irina the maid thought that her parents would like this letter. She thought it was quite informative. The maid also asked if Alexander had said that he would not be able to come today. Anastasia nodded, confirming that he really would not be able to come, and it was due to his plans. The lady confirmed that Alexander would be busy all day and specified that this would be the case throughout the week. In this regard, she decided that it was necessary to find a place for the next meeting in advance. Anastasia remembered that the original version mentioned different meeting places, and it occurred to her that perhaps she should choose one of these options. Ash always chose only the most luxurious and famous places for his entertainment, preferring to arrange meetings in expensive establishments and popular locations in the city. The protagonists, on the contrary, chose only the most ordinary places. It could be a library, an ordinary street, or even a ball, and none of these places seemed special. Anastasia couldn't understand how they could be so boring. When the world was full of interesting and unusual places, Ash loved fun, and they, on the contrary, always avoided anything extraordinary. Suddenly, the idea of the Forest of Remorse came to her mind. The weather was just right for going there, and she realized that it would be a great place for the next meeting.